Despite the massive scale of the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters, its appearance could not be said to be extravagant. In fact, it might not even be on par with the royal palaces of some conferred empires. Nevertheless, through the eye of insight, Zhang Xian could still see righteous aura suffusing the area, creating a dignified and solemn atmosphere. Even the most impetuous individual would feel compelled to hold himself prim and proper under such an atmosphere. It is called academic aura, Luo Ruoxin said. The Master-Teacher Pavilion has been spreading its teachings across the Master-Teacher continent for tens of thousands of years, bringing wisdom to the masses. The academic aura of the world could be said to have congregated in this area. Due to that, it's much easier to achieve a breakthrough cultivating here. I see. Zhang Xian nodded. He had been a little perplexed to hear that Luo Ruoxin was able to see the academic aura just like him, but he chose not to fuss over it. Instead, he proceeded into the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters together with her. The area right before the entrance was a clearing. There was a towering monument standing at a height of over 100 meters tall erected in the midst of the clearing, and the tip of the tablet seemed to pierce right into the clouds. Is this the Master-Teacher Pavilion's Monument of Valiance? Zhang Xian's expression suddenly turned solemn. While he had never been before, he had read many books relating to the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters. He knew that there was a Monument of Valiance erected in the empty clearing just outside of its entrance. It was used to record the names of the heroes who had sacrificed themselves in the midst of liberating mankind from oppression. There were no ornaments on the monument, but on the ground, there were a couple of flower baskets and incense sticks that left trails of smoke drifting into the boundless sky. There were several massive words written on the monument that induced a heavy feeling in one even before approaching it. This was a feeling that came from the depths of one's soul, compelling even great sage cultivators to lower their heads deferentially. These names were all written by Kong Shi personally. They are the names of the heroes who fought against the otherworldly demonic tribe back then. Luo Ruoxin explained as she gazed upon the monument with an unreadable look in her eyes. So many lives were lost in the conflict. Indeed, Zhang Xian nodded solemnly. Zhang Lingyuan, Chen Qichuan Wu Lingji. They were just names. There were no labels to indicate their accomplishments or their standing. Yet these names seemed to contain a soul of their own. Instead, the young man continued asking politely, "May I know how I should address you?" Please don't misunderstand. It's in order to inform our deputy pavilion master the identity of his guest. I am Zhang Xian, Zhang Xian replied. Zhang Xian? You are Zhang Xian? Despite being calm all this while, the young man jolted in shock upon hearing that name. His voice abruptly grew sharper, seemingly unable to believe what he had just heard. His voice had been a little loud, causing the crowd in the surroundings to overhear their conversation. Curious gazes began gathering on them. He's Zhang Xian. After hearing of his deeds, I thought that he would have 3 heads and 6 arms, but he looks more ordinary than I thought. Ordinary is an understatement. Even his appearance is nothing outstanding. His looks don't even come close to matching mine. I sure pity you. To think that you would become blind at such a young age. Such discussions could be heard in the surroundings. Zhang Xian did not expect to enjoy such great fame in the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters, and his face twitched slightly upon hearing the chatter around him. Taking a deep breath, he focused his attention of the young man before him and clasped his fist. I'll be troubling you then. Oh, this way please, Zhang Shi. The young man quickly shook out of his daze and led the way forward. As he made his way over toward Ren Shi's office, he could not help but wonder. I heard that this fellow is a vicious figure. Would he pummel me due to my momentary discourtesy? But I'm only a 7-star master teacher. There's no way I could be a match for him. If he really wishes to make a move on me, should I lie down and let him do as he pleases? Or should I at least try to put up a fight before being pummeled? What a dilemma. Just what can I do in order to minimize my embarrassment while appearing awe-inspiring? In a sense, it's an amazing feat to survive the beating of the legendary Zhang Xian, right? Perhaps I might just be able to win the heart of the woman I love once she hears of this deed. Just like that, the young man's thoughts drifted further and further. If Zhang Xian knew of the thoughts of the fellow before him, he would have surely sent him flying with a single kick. I am a peace-loving, amiable, respectful, self-loving, magnanimous, low-profile person, all right? Just how in the world did you come to the conclusion that I'm a violent man who kicks up a fuss over nothing? Putting aside their miscellaneous thoughts, it did not take long for them to arrive before a massive door. Our deputy pavilion master is inside. I'll see you off here then. Seeing that Zhang Xian did not make a move on him, a hint of disappointment surfaced in the depths of the eyes of the young man. Nevertheless, his actions still remained incredibly polite. Don't you have to report my arrival? Zhang Xian was taken aback. Zhang Shi, you are the head of the Zhang clan and the sanctum of sages. There's no need for you to report your arrival in order to meet the deputy pavilion master. The young man replied courteously. In terms of standing, Zhang Xian could be considered an equal to Ren Shi. Naturally, there was no need for him to go to the trouble of seeking an audience. Thank you for your help, Zhang Xian told the young man before pushing open the door and walking in. The moment he stepped into the room, he immediately noticed that something was amiss. There were many familiar faces within the room. Many of the 9-star master teachers that he had met back in the Empire Alliance city were there, and there was quite a number of renowned experts as well. At the same time, the crowd also turned their heads over to the door and were taken aback by whom they saw. Zhang Shi, you came at a timely moment. I was just about to look for you. The first one to recover was Ren Shi, and he quickly cleared up the air with a light chuckle. You have comprehended the spatial, time, and soul quintessences, and your cultivation has reached Saint Nine Dan pinnacle as well. Even though you haven't met the formal requirements required to be a 9-star master teacher, you are already qualified to apply for a 9-star master teacher emblem. Since everyone is around today, why don't we carry out your 9-star master teacher examination right now? You are asking me to take the 9-star master teacher examination right now? Zhang Xian was taken aback. He did not expect Ren Shi to raise such a matter all of a sudden. I'm afraid that I'm not prepared for it yet. I didn't even brush my teeth after waking up earlier today, so it might not really be a good idea for me to take the examination right now. It was not that Zhang Xian was reluctant to become a 9-star master teacher, but he really was not prepared for it yet. The reason why he had come here was to find Kong Shi's superior breakthrough method and advance his cultivation to Great Sage 1 Dan. He did not think that Ren Shi would ask him to undergo the 9-star master teacher examination as soon as they met. Anyone in his position would be dazed. I have checked your supporting occupations, and your proficiencies have already reached levels comparable to the inceptive sages. With your capabilities and talents, I don't think that you'll face any trouble in the examination. It's just a matter of when you want to do it. Ren Shi remarked with a smile. He had witnessed the prowess of the young man with his own eyes, be it in the impartation of knowledge, his cultivation, or his capabilities in other fields. They could be said to be impeccable. It was inevitable that he would become a 9-star master teacher. In his view, there was no reason to put off the inevitable. Furthermore, this invitation could also be viewed as a symbol of goodwill and a desire for reconciliation from the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. All right then. May I know how the 9-star Master Teacher examination goes? Zhang Xian asked. Since Ren Shi had already put it out like that, there was no need for Zhang Xian to hesitate too much. He would eventually take the 9-star Master Teacher examination anyway, so there was no reason for him to put it off. Given that Ren Shi had already given him such an offer, he might as well get it over and done with. Just that, the process seemed a little too informal for something as important as the 9-star master teacher examination. It was almost as if it was no big deal at all. Typically speaking, the 9-star master teacher examination requires the examinee to declare his philosophy of pedagogy and find a way to ascertain its effectiveness. However, just the fact that you are able to raise disciples like Wang Ying, Zheng Yang, Zhaoya, and the others is more than enough to prove the feasibility of your philosophy of pedagogy. As such, there's no need to go through the trouble of examining that. Ren Shi explained. 9-star master teachers had to have their own set of values and principles that they believed in when it came to teaching their students. While he was uncertain what Zhang Xian's values and principles were, the fact that he had been able to raise so many outstanding students was more than enough to show that his philosophy was effective. Aside from that, your soul depth must also reach 27, and you must be nominated by at least 3 9-star master teachers. You have met the requirements for those 2 as well, so the only segment remaining is the trial of strength. In the interest of time, let's not make things too complicated. Wang Shi, lower your cultivation down to introspective convalescence realm primary stage, and exchange blows with Zhang Shi. Ren Shi instructed. All right. An elder known as Wang Shi walked out from the crowd. He took in a deep breath, and the next moment, his aura swiftly weakened. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation had already been suppressed down to introspective convalescence realm primary stage. His true cultivation was only at introspective convalescence realm advanced stage, so it was not too difficult for him to suppress his cultivation. With a smile, he turned to Zhang Xian and said, Zhang Shi, be wary. Since it's an examination, I won't be able to go easy on you. I expect nothing less, Zhang Xian replied with a smile. Seeing that Wang Shi was already prepared, Zhang Xian swiftly sent a fist over. With a loud roar, Wang Shi also retaliated with a fist of his own. Pung. So. Aha. Wang Shi vanished into thin air. The master teachers in the room froze on the spot. Was this really the prowess coming from a Saint Nindan cultivator? Even if they were the ones facing the attack, they did not have any confidence that they would be able to fare any better than Wang Shi. Even though your cultivation hasn't reached great sage yet, the fact that you were able to defeat Wang Shi shows that your fighting prowess is already up to par. Lu Shi, prepare the 9-star master teacher emblem. From today, Zhang Shi is a 9-star master teacher too. Ren Shi nodded with a smile. That's it. Zhang Xian was rendered speechless. Everything had happened so quickly that he could hardly believe that this was real. Were it not the fact that he knew that he was in the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, and that the person standing before him was the Deputy Pavilion Master, he would have thought that he was being scammed by a fraudster. Within half an hour of entering the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, he had sent a person flying, and all of a sudden, he was being congratulated for becoming a 9-star Master Teacher. Even the 1-star Master Teacher examination that he had taken back then had not been this easy. If this was going to be the case, why did he even go through the trouble of advancing through the ranks? He could have just taken the 9-star Master Teacher examination right away and cleared everything in one go. Since you have officially become a 9-star Master Teacher, you are qualified to attend this meeting. Paying no heed to the speechless expression on Zhang Xian's face, Ren Shi carried on with a grim look on his face. Knowing that the matters that they were going to confer about were confidential, Luo Ruoxin turned to Zhang Xian and said, I'll wait for you outside. After which, she departed from the room. Knowing that Ren Shi and the others would not allow an outsider to listen in on the meeting, Zhang Xian did not stop her. Zhang Xian could not be said to be a noble and selfless individual. He was selfish from time to time, and the initial reason that he became a master teacher was not to save mankind, but to make use of that identity to access more books. However, there were times when one simply could not back down. If mankind was massacred, what use would his strength be? He was no longer the same individual as when he first transcended over to this world. He had his family and his students. The Luo clan and the Jiang clan were looking to him for directions. There were many people in this world whom he wanted to protect. In fact, the reason he was so determined to mend the relations between the Luo clan and the Zhang clan was for this purpose. Since the threat of the otherworldly demonic tribe was already on their doorstep, there was no way he would back down at this point in time. It's truly reassuring to have you as our ally. Hearing Zhang Xian's agreement, relief broke out on Ren Qingyuan and the other 9-star master teachers' faces. They had been wondering how they could talk Zhang Xian into the matter. But who would have thought that he would accept it so decisively? I'll send out an order to have the 3 premier clans heed the Master Teacher Pavilion's directive right now, Zhang Xian replied. Watching as Zhang Xian relayed his instructions to the 3 premier clans without stalling for time, Ren Qingyuan quickly turned his attention back to the 9-star master teachers and issued several strategic commands before dispersing the group. Having acquired the assistance of the 3 premier clans, Ren Qingyuan knew that they would be able to curb the threat of the otherworldly demonic tribe for the time being. Heaving a sigh of relief, he finally turned his gaze back to Zhang Xian and asked, "Zhang Shi, sorry to keep you waiting. May I know the reason behind your visit to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters?" When he first heard the name of the young man, he had been nothing more than an insignificant figure who had chosen to pass himself off as Yang Shi's student. But before he knew it, the young man had already become a powerhouse whose influence rivaled or even exceeded his. So many things had happened over the past month, and nearly everything was centered around him. As long as the young man did not suffer a premature death, it was likely that he would surpass Yang Shi in the future. "To be honest, I have a favor to ask of you." Zhang Xian clasped his fist. "I would like to pay a visit to the shrine of Kong Shi." On their way there, Luo Ruoxin had told him that it was likely that Kong Shi's superior breakthrough method would be placed in the shrine of Kong Shi. The shrine of Kong Shi was a heritage site constructed after the departure of Kong Shi in order to celebrate his achievements. It contained his personal writing, clothes, and personal possessions. "I was still wondering what you were going to ask for. All newly promoted 9-star master teachers have to pay a visit to the shrine of Kong Shi as a part of the formalities, so it goes without saying that you are allowed to enter the shrine of Kong Shi. Allow me to bring you over right now." Upon hearing the request, Ren Qingyuan chuckled softly and said, "It's fine. At a time like this, you probably have a lot of urgent matters to attend to, so I shan't impose on you. However, if I may boldly request, I would like to bring Ruoxin with me into the shrine of Kong Shi," Zhang Xian said. The superior breakthrough method was bound to be hidden in an inconspicuous location, so he might require Luo Ruoxin's help on that. On top of that, if Ren Qingyuan followed along, it could hinder his search efforts. Ren Qingyuan frowned upon hearing the request. He pondered for a moment before saying, "By convention, only 9-star master teachers are allowed to enter the shrine of Kong Shi, and newly promoted 9-star master teachers have to be accompanied by a more senior master teacher but on account of your contributions to mankind, I'll make an exception for you. However, I'll still have to ask you not to stay in the shrine of Kong Shi for too long, roughly a day at maximum." "Thank you." Zhang Xian's eyes lit up upon hearing those words, and he quickly clasped his fist in gratitude. As the shrine of Kong Shi contained Kong Shi's personal writings and possessions, just being in the vicinity of the shrine was highly beneficial to one's cultivation. Those who had entered the premises were likely to leave with new insights or considerable advancements in their cultivation. As such, it was not rare for 9-star master teachers to frequent the place. However, it was unsaid of for a non-master teacher individual to enter the premises and even stay an entire day there. It truly was not easy for Ren Qingyuan to give such leeway to him. "I'll head over right now," Zhang Xian said. After receiving Ren Qingyuan's approval, Zhang Xian clarified the location of the shrine of Kong Shi before walking out of the room. He quickly found Luo Ruoxin, and the two of them began making their way over to their destination. The shrine of Kong Shi was founded by Kong Shi's direct disciple, ancient sage Zi Yuan. After his departure, many of his handwritten drafts, clothes, weapons, and the sort could be found in the shrine. The main purpose for creating the shrine was to allow later generations to feel the spirit of the world's teacher and experience his greatness. Many of the artifacts within the shrine of Kong Shi were not offensive in nature, wielding very little prowess. However, they were able to inspire deeper contemplation to cultivators, bringing them epiphanies. Walking along the shrine, they saw the bloodied robe that Kong Shi had left behind while fending off the otherworldly demonic tribe. The letter that he had sent out after being trapped at Chenkai. Zhang Xian found himself at a loss for words for a very long time. Even someone as powerful as Kong Shi had to go through so much in order to quell the otherworldly demonic tribe. After taking a walk around the room, Luo Ruoxin finally stopped before a certain artifact and pointed to it. "This is the Sage Ascension platform that Kong Shi left behind after his breakthrough, to introspective convalescence realm back then. If he has left a cultivation technique behind, it's likely to be hidden in there. Zhang Xian quickly turned his gaze over and saw a round stone platform placed among the artifacts. Its surface was cloaked with a layer of beautiful light, reminiscent of jadeite. "This is a product from the heavenly flame tribulation?" Zhang Xian remarked in astonishment. There was no doubt that the material of the stone platform was the common blue jadestone. However, for some reason, it felt extraordinarily wholesome, as if it was one complete entity by itself. Furthermore, it emanated a radiant sheen far beyond that of ordinary blue jadestones, comparable to impeccable jadestones. The only force in the world that could turn an ordinary blue jadestone into an impeccable jadestone would be the heavenly flame. More importantly, his primordial spirit felt a feeling of intimacy from the blue jadestone, which further confirmed his doubts. "It's indeed the doing of the heavenly flame." Luo Ruoxin nodded. After confirming the matter, Zhang Xian activated the Eye of Insight and began examining the stone platform carefully. A moment later, a deep frown formed on his forehead. He had already figured out how the heavenly flame had converted an ordinary blue jadestone into its current state, but he was still completely bewildered as to how Kong Shi managed to summon the heavenly flame tribulation for his breakthrough to Great Sage One Dan. There was nothing that he could consider a clue on the stone platform. Zhang Xian turned to Luo Ruoxin and asked doubtfully, "If the superior breakthrough method is truly hidden in here, considering how many formidable 9-star master teachers have looked at this stone platform, its secrets should have already been uncovered by now, right?" Master teachers were known for their sharp eye of discernment. While his eye of insight was particularly formidable in this field, there were still over a dozen experts before him who possessed the same ability as well, namely the preceding sanctum heads of the Sanctum of Sages. If even they could not find anything wrong with the stone platform, was there really a cultivation technique hidden in it? "Did you bring the Saint Ascension platform Kong Shi has left behind with you?" Instead of explaining the matter, Luo Ruoxin asked about a completely different matter instead. "I did." Zhang Xian flicked his wrist, and another stone platform materialized before him. Before passing the orb containing the Qiuwu Palace to Luo Ganzhen, he had already placed the Saint Ascension platform into his storage ring. "Try using the cultivation technique of the Saint Ascension Decipher to infuse your Jinqi into the Saint Ascension platform," Luo Ruoxin instructed. Zhang Xian was not sure where this was going, but he nodded in agreement. Taking a deep breath, he swiftly infused his Jinqi into the Saint Ascension platform. Tizzi. As his Jinqi coursed through the Saint Ascension platform, it began emanating energies of a myriad different colors and slowly floated into the air. At the same time, as if attracted by the energies of the Saint Ascension platform, the Sage Ascension platform was drawn over. The two stone platforms began fusing with one another, and before long, they were already a single entity. Zhang Xian was startled. He did not think that the two stone platforms would actually be able to fuse with one another. Just as he was about to ask Luo Ruoxin what was going on, a brilliant burst of light exploded from the stone platform. An illusory black silhouette appeared in the midst of the radiant surroundings, sitting on the stone platform with crossed legs, his eyes tightly shut. This is the recording Kong Shi left behind when he made a breakthrough to Great Sage One Dan. The breakthrough method is found in here. Luo Ruoxin's voice sounded anxious. Recording. Taking a closer look, Zhang Xian noticed that the silhouette was cultivating. Surges of spiritual energy were gushing into his body, circulating in a certain pathway. "This is Kong Shi?" Zhang Xian's face twitched. Rather than a human, the silhouette looked more like a burnt sweet potato instead. If not for Luo Ruoxin's reminder, he would not have thought that it was a human. Was this blurred black thing really Kong Shi? Seeing that Zhang Xian was distracted by such small details, Luo Ruoxin sighed helplessly. "The recording will only appear once. It's only triggered due to your successful breakthrough as a celestial saint. This opportunity won't come again if you don't pay close attention." Hearing those words, Zhang Xian hurriedly focused his attention on watching the movements of the black shadow. Since it would only appear once, He would have to pay close attention to it. Otherwise, if he missed any crucial aspects, it would be too late for regrets. Flaws. Zhang Xian willed. Hula. The Library of Heaven's path jolted, but no book was compiled. Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. It had failed him at the crucial moment once more. Of course, it could be because Kong Shi possessed the discarnate constitution of divination as well. So the silhouette that he left behind could not be compiled by the Library of Heaven's path. Forget it. I'll just have to remember as many things as possible by myself. Seeing that the Library of Heaven's path was not working, Zhang Xian could only observe the movements of the silhouette before him seriously. Sitting on the stone platform, spiritual energy continuously surged into the silhouette, and its aura was growing stronger and stronger. After a moment of examination, Zhang Xian frowned. There is something bizarre about how spiritual energy is entering the body of the silhouette. When pushing for a breakthrough, cultivators would usually open all of their acupoints to take in spiritual energy equally throughout their body, so as to better channel it toward the dantian, thus advancing their cultivation. However, this was not the case for the silhouette. He was taking in spiritual energy fastest from his head, followed by his innards, and finally his limbs. Furthermore, the attributes of the spiritual energy that he was taking in were different too. The spiritual energy that he was channeling into his head was overflowing with vitality, seemingly encompassing all attributes. On the other hand, the spiritual energy that he was channeling into his innards was of the fire attribute, the wood attribute for his upper limbs, and the cold attribute for his lower limbs. Noticing Zhang Xian's confused frown, Luo Ruoxin explained, "It's the 4 seasons." 4 seasons? Zhang Xian asked doubtfully. The world can be divided into 4 seasons. People often say that the natural world is devoid of consciousness, but it does instinctively obey a certain law in order to rid the impurities it has accumulated. For example, a poison master can concoct a poisonous substance and scatter it around the lands, creating a blight. But with sufficient time, the world will still be able to neutralize the poison through the power of the changing seasons, thus healing the damage it has sustained, Luo Ruoxin elaborated. So this is similar to removing the damaged cells in the introspective convalescence realm? Zhang Xian widened his eyes in realization. The natural world wielded the amazing power to heal any damage it had sustained with time, no matter how severe it was. It could take hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years, but eventually, any damage would be undone, leaving nary a trace at all. So in terms of regeneration, there was nothing that could outdo the natural forces of the world. Not even ancient sages could come close to competing with it. Zhang Xian nodded in wonderment. What Kong Shi did was comprehend the ingenuity behind the 4 seasons and incorporate it into his body in order to achieve a breakthrough to the introspective convalescence realm. As expected of the world's teacher, he was truly extraordinary. It was no wonder he was able to summon the heavenly flame tribulation as soon as he achieved a breakthrough to Great Sage One Dan. Using a cultivation technique that was in such close alignment with the world, it was inevitable that he would incur the envy of the heavens. The body as the 4 seasons, the innards as the 5 cardinal directions, the spirit as the heavens, the body as the earth, the creations and yin-yang as the soul. The more Zhang Xian looked, the more surprised he was. He slowly sat down and began to cultivate. The bottleneck that had limited his cultivation tightly in the past began to loosen, and it seemed as if he would take the final step forward at any moment. Just as Zhang Xian was just about to push for a breakthrough, a thought suddenly came to his mind. No, that's not right. Kong Shi has his own method of pushing for a breakthrough to Great Sage, but I don't share the same constitution as him. I can use his wisdom as a guiding direction for me, but I can't blindly imitate everything that he does. Kong Shi had spent his life fighting against the otherworldly demonic tribe, and he had his own persistence and righteousness. On the other hand, Zhang Xian had his own encounters and experiences that were very different from Kong Shi's. With such divergence in their pathways, their cultivation method could not be identical to one another. If Zhang Xian forcefully attempted to walk down the pathway of another, it was likely that his cultivation would go berserk instead. Possessing the Library of Heaven's path, The techniques I have cultivated have always been perfect. In terms of comprehension of the heavens, there's no one who can compete with me, Zhang Xian thought with a brilliant light gleaming from his eyes. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never taken a single wrong step. Other cultivators could devote their lives to desperately scouring the world, but all they would discover eventually was just a superficial understanding of the world. On the other hand, what he had in his mind was the very embodiment of the heavens. Was there any being in this world who boasted a greater understanding of the world than him? Fighter cultivation techniques, transcendent mortal cultivation techniques, saint cultivation techniques. As his comprehension of each cultivation level flowed through his brain, they swiftly strung together to form a magnificent collage. This is what I want, Zhang Xian thought as his consciousness delved right into the collage. The next moment, he found himself standing in uncharted territories, a world that he had never known before. Boom! The bottleneck that had his cultivation sealed at St. Nindan Pinnacle was forcefully torn apart, and his Jinqi began undergoing a qualitative metamorphosis. At the same time, his aura also grew stronger at a furious pace. I have made a breakthrough. So this is the power of a true great sage. Feeling the incredible energy coursing through his meridians, Zhang Xian's heart pounded in excitement. It was fortunate that Luo Ruoxin had stopped him from making a breakthrough previously. If he had used the inferior breakthrough method instead, he would have been much weaker than how he was now. Ho ho ho! Shortly after his breakthrough, dark clouds began collapsing inward. An astounding amount of energy was gathering in the area, shrouding the entire shrine of Kong Shi. What's happening? That fellow couldn't have made a breakthrough there, could he? Shit! That's the shrine of Kong Shi. Upon seeing the dark clouds gathering in the area, the faces of those in the master-teacher pavilion paled in fright. They nearly spurted blood on the spot. Bro, surely you could have chosen a much better place to achieve a breakthrough, right? That's the shrine of Kong Shi. Do you know that destroying it is no different from making enemies out of all the master teachers across the master-teacher continent? That's a sin you'll never be able to absolve yourself from. Quick, stop him! Ren Qingyuan cried out in despair. Had he known that this would happen, he never would have allowed that dastardly troublemaker in. Other 9-star master teachers entering the shrine of Kong Shi would have their souls cleansed, becoming powerful experts who were willing to lay down their lives for mankind. Yet that fellow actually went in and called a cultivation tribulation upon that sacred place. It was already bad enough for him to use his cultivation tribulation to tear apart the Zhang clan and the Glacier Plain court. But to think that he was not satisfied with just that. He actually wanted to tear down the master-teacher pavilion headquarters shrine of Kong Shi too. Didn't I treat you courteously earlier? Why do you still want to harm me? Haven't I apologized enough for what I did to you back then? While cursing Zhang Xian on the inside, Ren Qingyuan rushed to the shrine of Kong Shi with the other elders. Just as he was about to rush in, he felt a furious wave of intense heat gushing out from the shrine, keeping everyone out. Ren Qingyuan grabbed one of the 9-star master teachers and asked, "What's going on right now?" The shrine of Kong Shi is surrounded by a unique power that prevents us from inspecting inside with our spiritual perception, so we have no idea. The 9-star master teacher hurriedly explained. A unique power? It's able to keep out the spiritual perception of 9-star master teachers too? Ren Qingyuan was taken aback. There should only be 4 cardinal directions, but this is including the idea of center too. Even the weakest 9-star master teacher, who remained in the master-teacher pavilion headquarters, was at least at introspective convalescence realm primary stage. On the other hand, the strongest ones were around Sword Saint Xing's caliber. Yet, with their strength, they were neither able to enter the shrine of Kong Shi or inspect the interiors with their spiritual perception. Just what in the world was going on inside? My ancestor, will you only be appeased after you tear down the shrine of Kong Shi too? Boom! In his moment of exasperation, he saw ominous clouds overflowing with power gathering swiftly in the area. Ferocious flames could be seen crackling amidst the clouds, on the verge of descending onto the world at any moment. Is this the heavenly flame tribulation? But why would the flames be black in color? Isn't he only at St. Nindan Pinnacle? How did he summon such a powerful cultivation ordeal? I don't know either. Maybe it's because he's a genius? The crowd was stunned to see the nature of the clouds gathering in the area. They had verified Zhang Xian's cultivation when they tested him during the 9-star master teacher examination earlier. There was no doubt about it, he was only at St. Nine Dan Pinnacle. Even if he managed to achieve a breakthrough, he should have only been at introspective convalescence realm 2. But for some inconceivable reason, the cultivation ordeal he had summoned was the heavenly flame tribulation, not to mention an extraordinarily powerful one at that. How the heck did you do it? Did you just absorb all of the treasures in the shrine of Kongshi? A thought suddenly flashed across Ren Qingyuan's mind, and his body began trembling uncontrollably. He exclaimed in horror, "Wait a moment. That's the Empyrean heavenly flame. It's the strongest heavenly flame tribulation. Black heavenly flames." This was a phenomenon which even the knowledgeable 9-star master teachers gathered here had never heard of. Even Ren Qingyuan only knew of its existence through vague information detailing its existence in the Pavilion Master Seal. The Empyrean heavenly flame existed in the color of dusk, and there was nothing in the world that it couldn't set ablaze. If left to free rein, there was little doubt that it would scorch down everything in the world. It was the most fearsome heavenly flame tribulation, and the only cultivator that was known to have summoned it was Kongshi. Was the young man undergoing an encounter similar to that of Kongshi? Did he manage to find some kind of obscure heritage hidden in the shrine of Kongshi, which they have missed out on? But even if there was some hidden heritage, it didn't make sense for the young man to find it so quickly. Seal the news for the time being. Make sure that not a single word about this matter leaks out. Ren Qingyuan turned to the elders around him and ordered sternly, regardless of whether Zhang Xian was able to survive the heavenly flame tribulation or not. It wasn't good news for the Master Teacher Pavilion. If he were to survive the heavenly flame tribulation, it would mean that an expert comparable to Kongshi had appeared on the world. With the Zhang clan and many major powers under his leadership, the authority of the Master Teacher Pavilion would be swiftly diminished in the near future. On the other hand, if he were to die in the tribulation, how were they to explain to the Zhang clan, the Luo clan, and the Jiang clan that their head had died in the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters? For the time being, the only thing they could do was to conceal the news as long as they could. The 3 premier clans had barely united together under Zhang Xian, and it was through tapping into the young man's influence that the Master Teacher Pavilion was able to mobilize the 3 premier clans. If a mishap were to happen to the young man at this point in time, everything could swiftly unravel. Faced with internal disharmony and external crisis, even the powerful Master Teacher Pavilion would collapse in the face of such pressure. We understand. Understanding the implications of this matter, the 9-star Master Teachers quickly created all sorts of formations around the area to conceal the phenomenon. Unaware of the panic occurring outside, Zhang Xian's consciousness was immersed in the internal state of his body. He was carefully discerning the changes occurring in his body. Slowly, he reconstructed the foundation of his body to a form that was in greater alignment with nature, thus allowing his energies to flow without any impediment. This resulted in a significant enhancement in his burst power. There are some changes to my meridian network as well. It's starting to bear some resemblance to the meridian network I have reconstructed for Zhaoye back then. The breakthrough in his Jinqi cultivation had introduced several changes to the mapping of his meridians too. His meridians have been shifted to assume a form reminiscent of Zhaoye's meridian network. It seemed like the meridian network he had reconstructed for Zhaoye was indeed ideal for cultivators. To put it in other words, this proved that the reason why the otherworldly demons were stronger than humans was because they were of a higher level of existence. Otherwise, their meridian network wouldn't have been so closely aligned to the ideal state. It was possible to raise one's level of existence through cultivation, but the difference in the starting point was still a gap that was hard to bridge. Take the dragon tribe for example. No one in the Master Teacher continent had ever seen a true pure-blooded dragon before. But there was no one who would deny that they were superior existences who wielded devastating strength. Even the dragonbone divine spear would have to bow in the face of the 8 notes of heavenly dragon. Honestly, Zhang Xian couldn't even begin to fathom just how powerful pure-blooded dragons would be. Most likely, they wielded strength far surpassing the ancient sages from birth. This was the gap stemming from the different level of existences between two beings. It was due to the fact that the otherworldly demons were blessed with a more logical constitution than humans, that they were of a higher level of existence. This superior constitution allowed them to be born as transcendent mortals, and it bestowed upon them longevity, far exceeding that of humans. The fact that his constitution had changed slightly upon reaching Great Sage meant that he had undergone a qualitative evolution in his level of existence. If he were to bear any offspring in his current state, even if his offspring failed to inherit his bloodline ability, they would still command talents above ordinary cultivators due to their superior constitution. In fact, most of the founders of Tier 3 sage clans were actually great sage for Dan sempiternal realm experts who failed to reach ancient sage in their lifetime. It seems like there are some advancements in my spiritual perception and physical strength too. The changes weren't limited to just Zhang Xian's meridian network. His spiritual perception had grown much stronger than before too. In the past, it would have been impossible for him to scrutinize the internal structure of each individual cell. But with his enhanced spiritual perception, he could see even the slightest crease within each cell. At the same time, the range of his spiritual perception had increased to 20 li as well. In other words, if he were to just activate his spiritual perception, nothing within a perimeter of 20 li would be able to escape his notice. Just by activating his spiritual perception, there would be no one within a perimeter of 20 li who would be able to escape his notice. As for his physical body, the improvements weren't significant yet, considering how he had barely achieved a breakthrough and hadn't gotten a chance to temper his body yet. Nevertheless, through the nourishment of the Jinqi coursing through his meridians, the resilience of his physical body had already surpassed that of Saint Pinnacle artifacts. It was beginning to advance toward the level of Great Sage artifacts. Of course, the greatest change he had experienced was still his Jinqi. It had become much purer and denser than before. An unimaginable amount of Jinqi had congregated in his dantian to form a seemingly endless ocean. I should focus on overcoming the heavenly flame tribulation first. All of this information gushed into his mind with a simple sweep of his spiritual perception. However, he knew that this wasn't a good time to be analyzing his own current condition. Taking a deep breath, he turned his gaze to the sky. Voila! In the moment that he turned his gaze to the sky, a bundle of black flame descended from the ominous clouds above. Absorb. With the previous experience of dealing with the Empyrean heavenly flame, there was no longer any fear in Zhang Xian's heart. Without any hesitation, he absorbed the black flame into his body. But in the next moment, excruciating pain assaulted his entire existence. An intense heat raged within his body, threatening to melt him down into a puddle of goo. I have to drive my Jinqi and use the heat to temper my body. Zhang Xian knew that he was undergoing the scorching body tribulation, scorching spirit tribulation, and scorching heart tribulation simultaneously. Whatever pain he felt was, in truth, a trial for him as well. 3 ordeals simultaneously, which included trials on his spirit and heart as well. He couldn't afford to give up now. The moment that he surrendered himself to fear would be the moment that he would be reduced to ashes. Knowing this fact for well, Zhang Xian gritted his teeth and forced himself to bear with the pain as he hurriedly drove his Jinqi to disperse the heat. Tizziz. Under the relentless ramming of his Heaven's Path Jinqi, the huge bundle of flame was swiftly reduced to many seeds of fire. Nevertheless, they continued to burn with the same fervor as before. Before Zhang Xian knew it, the pain had further intensified. It felt as though it was stabbing deeply into him, rendering him lightheaded. No, this isn't right. How can this be even more painful than the heavenly flame tribulation my primordial spirit faced? Zhang Xian thought in alarm as cold sweat gushed down his body. With the experience of overcoming the Empyrean heavenly flame once, he thought that he had nothing to fear this time around. Yet, he realized that his previous experience wasn't any use at all. Could it be that what I have encountered earlier was the heavenly flame tribulation, whereas this one is the sage ascension ordeal? They aren't of the same level as one another? What his primordial spirit had faced previously was indeed the Empyrean heavenly flame, but it was summoned by the breakthrough of his soul cultivation to Aureate body realm. On the other hand, the Empyrean heavenly flame he was facing at the moment was a cultivation ordeal summoned by the unique circumstances of his breakthrough to introspective convalescence realm. This was an unconventional tribulation which was summoned only by Kong Shi in the past tens of thousands of years. There was a good chance that it was no ordinary heavenly flame tribulation. Zhang Xian could understand that this cultivation ordeal was unconventional, but wasn't this way too strong? Even his Aureate body realm consummation primordial spirit was having trouble coping with the intense heat of the Empyrean heavenly flame. It was to the point that it seemed as if his consciousness would simply fade away at any moment. He could hardly bring himself to think what would have become of him if he had not advanced his soul cultivation to Aureate body realm in advance. Perhaps he would have lost his consciousness in the moment he absorbed the heavenly flame in his body, thus allowing the heavenly flame to ravage his body as it pleased. If it was already so difficult for him, how did Kong Shi, who didn't possess the library of heaven's path, survive this nigh impossible ordeal? Zhang Xian couldn't help but wonder in incredulity. 10 km. Knowing that this wasn't a good time for his mind to be wandering around the place, Zhang Xian curbed the dizziness in his head and focused his attention on the silhouette on the stone platform. At this moment, the silhouette seemed to be undergoing a similar experience as him. Heavenly flames descending from the heavens seared him mercilessly, turning him into the color of black charcoals. His aura withered swiftly under the heat, and it felt as if he would wilt and breathe his last. Just as his aura grew so feeble that it was nearly indiscernible, a small seed of energy suddenly sprouted from his body. The small seed of energy grew relentlessly in the face of the heat, accumulating power and vitality. Before long, it had already developed into a colossal tree. The silhouette remained completely motionless throughout the process, but his presence seemed to be growing bigger and bigger. It came to a point where it seemed to tower over everything in the world. This is resurgence after desolation, revival after demise? Zhang Xian's heart jolted in astonishment. With the arrival of autumn, the resplendent world would gradually wilt and lose all vitality, leaving nothing but piles of discarded autumn leaves on the ground. However, when spring returned to the world once more, everything would come back to life. Vitality would surge back into the world, resuscitating the dead and bestowing new lives. This was the cycle of nature, and the silhouette on the stone platform was using this cycle to his advantage. The more I try to oppose the black flame, the greater the intensity it'll burn with. In other words, if I choose not to oppose the heavenly flame, the temperature of the flame will lower accordingly too. If I could just lower the temperature of the black flame to a level that's tolerable to me, I'll be able to use the heat to temper my body and gradually adapt to the heat. Zhang Xian widened his eyes in realization. This was actually a common trait amongst cultivation ordeal. Be it the lightning tribulation or the heavenly flame tribulation, their prowess of the tribulation mirrored the strength of the cultivator it was dealing with. Take the lightning tribulation as an example. The stronger one's cultivation was, the more powerful the lightning tribulation would be. To put it in other words, the more feeble one was, the weaker the lightning tribulation would be. It was counterintuitive, but the key to overcoming this cultivation ordeal was to not oppose it. Otherwise, even if his primordial spirit had reached Aureate body realm, he would still eventually succumb to the intense heat and pass out. What he had to do was to feign weakness before the cultivation ordeal, in order to give his body some time to adapt to the heat. The arrival of the winter solstice, the silencing of all beings. Finally seeing a plausible way out of his current quandary, Zhang Xian immediately abandoned all attempts to ward off the heat from the black flame. Consciousness seemed to have vanished from his body as he stopped breathing altogether. It was as if winter had descended, extinguishing the flames of life under a weight of coldness. In this moment, it seemed as if eternal silence had set upon the world. Tzz. Just as what Zhang Xian had expected, as soon as he abandoned all resistance, the black flame realized that it had lost an opponent and swiftly calmed down. As a result of that, the temperature of the black flame plummeted sharply. To make an analogy, Zhang Xian's jinqi was like gasoline to the black flame. The more he tried to fend off the black flame with his jinqi, the more domineering the black flame would become in order to quell him. On the other hand, if he were to seal his jinqi together and keep it from coming into contact with the black flame, with time, the black flame would lose its momentum and extinguish. Having given up on resistance, Zhang Xian's aura gradually weakened down to the point where he seemed nothing more than an ordinary mortal. In reciprocation to that, the black flame also diminished to a level tolerable to him. Under the scorching heat of the black flame, black gas began rising out of Zhang Xian's body. Slowly, a golden sheen emerged from his physical body. Having cultivated the heaven's path golden body, Zhang Xian knew that the black gas was the impurities accumulated within his body. Even if he had refined his body time and time again, it was nigh impossible for him to cleanse it fully. In a sense, this was similar to no matter how many times a person washed his body would never be perfectly clean. This was because the spiritual energy in nature was impure. This impurity was also the reason why spirit stones were divided into low tier, middle tier, high tier, and pinnacle. Even the pinnacle spirit stone, which boasted the highest purity of the spirit stones, wasn't close to being devoid of impurities. Given that even the spiritual energy absorbed by a cultivator wasn't perfectly clean, it was inevitable that impurities would gradually accumulate within one's body. The heavenly flame wielded the power to burn these impurities into black gas and expel them from a cultivator's body. Without these impurities to hinder his bodily functions, the cultivator would be able to wield greater power at his disposal. Gold was known to be the element that contained the least impurities. By tempering one's physical body over and over again, it would begin to emanate a beautiful golden sheen. This was also where the term aureate body originated from. As more and more black gas was being expelled, the golden sheen emanating from Zhang Xian's body grew more and more brilliant. In the previous heavenly tribulation, he had only managed to refine his primordial spirit to assume a golden color. However, under the intense scorching of the black flame, his physical body and jinqi were swiftly being purified, and they were beginning to turn golden as well. With a light knock, a metallic reverberation sounded from his body. It was almost as if his body was a legendary weapon in the making. I think I can start raising the temperature of the black flame. As the black flame tempered his body, he found that the excruciating pain he had suffered previously had been reduced to a level where he could hardly feel anything anymore. This was a sign that he had already adapted to the current level of heat emanated from the black flame, and it no longer posed a threat to him anymore. Thus, he began to drive his jinqi. In an instant, it was as if the world had come back to life. The frost had melted, and a surge of vitality sprouted from the depths of his body. Hong Long Long, sensing the changes in Zhang Xian's body, the black flame realized that it had been duped and flew into a rage. Innumerable bundles of black flames descended one after another, threatening to burn the young man down to ashes. However, this was the exact reaction Zhang Xian was anticipating from it. Without any hesitation, he absorbed the bundles of black flame into his body. Jijijiji. It wasn't too long ago that the black flame was a force far beyond his means to deal, but after undergoing a period of adaptation, his body had already built up some immunity against the heat. The damage and pain inflicted on his body had both reduced to a level acceptable to him. Black gas continued being expelled from his body, and the golden sheen on his body was becoming more and more brilliant. At the same time, the floor he was sitting on had initially turned black under the heat of the black flame, but at this point, it was starting to grow translucent. Slowly but surely, it was assuming a similar appearance to the blue jadestone he had seen previously. Slowly, Zhang Xian felt his body adapting completely to the black flame, and he heaved a sigh of relief. A glint flashed across his eyes as he thought, "It's about time to resolve the innate fetal poison." The innate fetal poison had managed to slip into his physical body and hide in his narrowest meridians, where he was unable to reach. This time around, he was determined to accomplish the deed once and for all. Zhang Xian took in a deep breath as he turned his gaze toward the ominous clouds above. With a powerful leap, he dashed right into the midst of the Empyrean heavenly flame. Since he had already resolved himself to eliminate the innate fetal poison, he would have to make sure to utterly obliterate it this time around such that it wouldn't be able to make a comeback again. The bundles of black flame that descended from the ominous clouds above wasn't sufficient to guarantee the complete destruction of the innate fetal poison, so he would have to dive into the core of the black flame to carry out the deed. Back then he did dive into the ominous clouds with his primordial spirit too, but he had remained near the edges. That created an opening for the innate fetal poison to get away. He wouldn't make such a mistake again. Oh. As soon as he dived into the midst of the dark clouds, he immediately felt innumerable bundles of black flame swarming in his direction, threatening to drown him whole. In the face of the frenzied assault from the black flames, Zhang Xian opened his acupoints and devoured them frenziedly. As the black flames surged into his meridians, he channeled them toward the area where the innate fetal poison hid. Jijiji! At this moment, the innate fetal poison was still idling by one corner, oblivious to the fact that Zhang Xian had already summoned the heavenly flame tribulation for his physical body too. Caught off guard by the ferocious onslaught of black flames, it released a shrill shriek and quickly took flight. Do you think you have anywhere to run to? After being tortured by the innate fetal poison for so long, Zhang Xian couldn't possibly allow it to do as it pleased anymore. Before the innate fetal poison could get far away, black flames surged into the path it was intending to escape to. Before it could even register the situation it was in, all of its paths of escape had been completely sealed. Zhang Xian knew how agile the innate fetal poison was when it came to fleeing, so he made sure that everything was in place before launching the decisive assault. At this moment, due to the overwhelming quantity of black flame in him, his entire body had turned into a human-shaped black fireball. If he still couldn't get rid of the innate fetal poison with this, he could really just kill himself on a blob of tofu. Jijiji! Completely surrounded, the innate fetal poison had no way to escape to. Engulfed in the midst of searing black flames, a piercing shriek reminiscent of a banshee's cry shook the air. The shriek slowly dwindled before everything was reduced to silence. It's finally over. Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. His physical body and primordial spirit had been tempered by heavenly flames, and his spiritual perception had grown sharp enough to notice any anomaly in his body. No matter how crafty the innate fetal poison was, there was no way it would be able to escape from this. Fearing that the innate fetal poison would make a comeback, even after the piercing shriek faded, Zhang Xian continued to channel black flames into his body to sear the innate fetal poison. He continued the process for nearly 10 minutes, stopping only when the dark clouds were beginning to dissipate. The innate fetal poison which had plagued him for over a year had disappeared without a trace. However, remaining in its place was a ball of black smoke. This bundle of black smoke wasn't too big, roughly the size of a fingernail. It sat quietly in the midst of his meridians, not moving at all. I have no idea what it is, but it's unlikely to be anything good. Let me see if I can get rid of it. Zhang Xian continued to channel the black flame into his body to burn the ball of black smoke, but it didn't seem to faze the ball of black smoke at all. Even the Empyrean heavenly flame, which boasted the ability to be able to burn anything down, was completely ineffective against it. What in the world is this ball of black smoke? Following which, Zhang Xian tried to use his soul energy and jinqi to expel the ball of black smoke out of his body, but to his astonishment, it seemed to have taken root in his body. No matter how he tugged and pulled, it refused to budge at all. Could this be the problem, which Kong Shi was referring to back then? Zhang Xian thought with a frown. After taming the Pavilion Master token, he encountered Kong Shi's will, and the latter told him that it wasn't too difficult to resolve the innate fetal poison. What was troublesome was the problem that came after it. He had successfully eradicated the innate fetal poison, but in its place, this ball of black smoke appeared. There was no doubt the problem, which Kong Shi was referring to, was this. Something which even Kong Shi deemed to be a problem, was likely to be really difficult to deal with. This ball of black smoke is residing in one of my smaller meridians, so my primordial spirit is unable to slip in. Furthermore, it doesn't seem like my Library of Heaven's path is working on it either. Zhang Xian frowned in frustration. He had used his Eye of Insight, Library of Heaven's path, and everything at his disposal, but he was still unable to identify what the ball of black smoke was. Forget it. Judging from its state, it doesn't seem to pose any harm to me for the time being. I guess I'll have to ask Kong Shi about it the next time I meet him. Zhang Xian examined the ball of black smoke carefully, and it didn't seem to be poisonous. Deeming it unlikely to cause him any harm in the short run, he decided to put this matter aside for the time being. While he was a little unnerved by its presence, it didn't seem like he was able to get rid of it at the moment. In any case, he had finally managed to resolve the innate fetal poison, and that was truly a huge load off his chest. The tension which had been weighing him down over the past year vanished without a trace, and he suddenly felt light and free. Hoo-hoo. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky were already halfway through their dissipation, and the heavenly flame tribulation was likely to flee very soon. The current heavenly flame tribulation doesn't pose any threat to me anymore. Even when the tribulation was at its full prowess, it was unable to bring him down. Given that it was already in the midst of dissipation, there was no way it would be able to hurt him anymore. It would be a waste to allow the black flame to dissipate just like that though. Otherwise, who knows when I'll be able to encounter it once more. Zhang Xian thought. The corners of his lips crept up as he flicked his wrist, and took out a 3 meters wide round platform. Golden Origin Spirit Stone. This was the treasure which the Dragonbone Divine Spear had given him back at ancient sage Ranqiu's ancient domain. However, as he had no suitable flame to process the material, he could only store it in his storage ring all this while. However, since there were remnants of the heavenly flame in the sky, and it happened that he had no other use for it at the moment, this was an ideal opportunity to reforge the Golden Origin Cauldron. That fellow had been following him for a very long while now. However, as he had advanced his cultivation too quickly, it didn't take long before it was rendered redundant. Since he had some spare time at the moment, it would be a good chance to upgrade this loyal subordinate of his. Who, as soon as the Golden Origin Spirit Stone came into contact with the black flame, the precious metal, which even the most powerful earth flame would have difficulty processing, began to soften. In less than 10 breaths, the massive platform had already been reduced to a puddle of metallic fluid. Golden Origin Cauldron, come out! Zhang Xian flicked his wrist. Who? The Golden Origin Cauldron materialized in the air. As soon as it appeared, it squealed out in delight. Master, did you suddenly miss me? Did someone bully you again? Tell me who he is, and I'll have him reduced to. But before it could finish squealing, it swiftly realized that something was amiss. When it noticed the black flames wrapped around it, its voice quivered in horror. Master, what's that? Why is it so hot? Master, did I offend you somehow that you actually want to melt me down? Please don't kill me. If you really want me to, I can even give my first time to you. Black lines streaked across Zhang Xian's face. Shut up. I am trying to upgrade you right now. If you dare utter another word of nonsense, I'll toss you into the black flames and burn you to death. Ah, yes, master. Hearing that its master was actually intending to upgrade it instead, the Golden Origin Cauldron heaved a sigh of relief. Just as it was about to say something, intense heat from the black flames suddenly gushed in from the surroundings. Under the overwhelming heat, its body began to distort as it lost its structural rigidity. It was gradually starting to melt. Zhang Xian waved his hand, and the melted Golden Origin Spirit Stone swiftly flew over. He began to fuse it together with the Golden Origin Cauldron. No, this isn't right. The Golden Origin Spirit Stone is too high-tiered. The smithing techniques that I have learned previously can't apply to it. How much of it do I need to fuse into the Golden Origin Cauldron in order to maximize its strength? Zhang Xian suddenly froze as a question popped up in his head. His comprehension of smithing was only at 8-star pinnacle at the moment, and the knowledge he had was clearly insufficient to properly process the Golden Origin Spirit Stone. A certain proportion had to be struck between various ores in order to maximize the resilience of the resulting alloy. The more precisely the resulting alloy stuck to the ratio, the more powerful it would be. He had never worked with the Golden Origin Spirit Stone before. It was simply too rare. He had only heard of its name before, so there was no way he could have known at what ratio it should be fused with the other metals in order to create a perfect alloy. I was too reckless. Zhang Xian's face twitched awkwardly. If the proportion of the alloy was wrong, no matter how much good stuff he packed into the forging process, the resultant artifact was unlikely to be too powerful. His only thought then was to make full use of the black flame, to reforge the Golden Origin cauldron, that he failed to think the matter through thoroughly. Considering that he had already started to fuse the Golden Origin cauldron together with the Golden Origin Spirit Stone, it was already too late for him to turn back now. Forget it. The Golden Origin Spirit Stone is an exceptionally powerful material, so the more the merrier. In any case, the materials used to forge the Golden Origin cauldron is too mediocre, so it would be good to replace them all at once. Being an optimistic person, Zhang Xian tossed those concerns to the back of his mind. Even if the proportion was wrong, an artifact which had the Golden Origin Spirit Stone mixed into it couldn't possibly turn out to be weak. Since he had already gone wrong, he might as well add more of it. Perhaps it might rectify his previous mistakes. As the Golden Origin cauldron fused with the 3 meters wide round platform, it was swiftly reduced to a metallic lump. At this moment, the dark clouds seemed to have run out of power, and with a the black flames began extinguishing one after another. Crap, the black flames are vanishing too quickly. I haven't even started forging it yet. Zhang Xian's face twitched in horror. He was supposed to be upgrading the Golden Origin cauldron, not to disfigure it. If the black flames were to vanish altogether, the alloy would swiftly solidify, making it nigh impossible for him to reshape it back to the form of a cauldron. Zhang Xian quickly flicked his wrist and whipped out a hammer. He rushed forward and began hammering the metallic lump into shape with powerful strikes. Ding dang ding dang. Ding dang ding dang. The sound of hammering echoed loudly in the air. Outside the shrine of Kong Shi, Rin Qingyuan and the others were looking at the dark clouds above with worried looks. Even I would have to flee in the face of the Empyrean heavenly flame, considering that Zhang Shi has just achieved a breakthrough not too long ago. Will he really be able to survive the cultivation ordeal? I don't know either. But doesn't he have the ability to control the lightning tribulation? Perhaps. He might be able to do the same with the heavenly flame tribulation too. There's a fundamental difference between lightning tribulations and heavenly flame tribulations. Look up there. He's dashing into the midst of the dark clouds now. Seeing Zhang Xian dash into the midst of the dark clouds, the crowd wasn't reassured in the least. Instead, their worry only served to deepen. He might still be able to withstand the lightning energy in the storm clouds of lightning tribulations. But those dark clouds harness a massive inferno within them. How is he going to survive such intense heat? Isn't that sheer recklessness? We can only pray that he has a plan in mind. While the 9-star master teachers were still discussing amongst one another, the dark clouds began showing signs of dissipation. Oh, the heavenly flame tribulation is about to dissipate. So quickly? It can't be that some mishap has happened to him, can it? The crowd quickly turned their gazes to the sky, wanting to see if the legendary genius was able to beat the odds and survive against the devastating Empyrean heavenly flame. However, they ended seeing something they didn't expect to see instead. Amidst the dark clouds, they saw a human silhouette taking out a hammer, and he began hammering a lump floating in front of him. Ding dang ding dang. Ding dang ding dang. There was a rhythm to the hammering, which sounded surprisingly pleasurable to the ears. He is forging a weapon. Following that question, silence drifted amongst the master teachers. There was no cultivator who would disagree that the heavenly flame tribulation was a perilous cultivation ordeal. Countless prodigies had lost their lives in the face of its devastating might. Even in the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, where the top geniuses of the Master Teacher continent were gathered, Most 9-star master teachers would spend from several dozens to over 100 years to prepare themselves before daring to face the scorching trial of the heavenly flame tribulation. It was not too long ago that Zhang Xian was still at St. Nine Dan Macrocosm Ascendancy realm. But before they knew it, he had already summoned a heavenly flame tribulation. To make things worse, the heavenly flame tribulation he had summoned was no other than the most terrifying Empyrean heavenly flame. It was no wonder why everyone was pessimistic about his survival. Was it really possible for a human to survive something of this level? But contrary to their expectations, not only did the young man emerge perfectly fine from the tribulation, they found that he was even making use of the heavenly flame to forge an artifact. Screw that. Constipated looks appeared on the faces of the 9-star master teachers all around. They stared at one another with widened eyes, not knowing what they should make of the situation before them. They had hypothesized many possibilities. Perhaps, the young man might have been burned to cinders, or maybe, he would be able to barely overcome it with grievous wounds. But the thought that he would make use of the heavenly flame to forge an artifact had never crossed their minds. Not even once. Had the world lost its mind? It was one thing for him to be able to control the lightning tribulation, but to actually be using the heavenly flame to forge an artifact. Hell, that was sheer extravagance. Bro, does your family own the heavens or something? The heavenly flame tribulation should have been the heaven's punishment against you. It's not a lighter for you to borrow a flame from. While their minds were struggling to come to terms with the freakish happenings unfolding before their eyes, Zhang Xian suddenly turned his gaze in their direction and asked, "Does any of you have any hibernal spirit essence? Lend me some for use. I need it to quench my artifact." Hibernal spirit essence? The abrupt request left Ren Qingyuan's face twitching in frenzy. Nevertheless, he quickly nodded his head and replied, "I have some here." He whipped out a jade bottle with a flick of his wrist before tossing it up into the sky. "Thanks." Zhang Xian grabbed the jade bottle and crushed it open. Hula! The hibernal spirit essence shot out from the jade bottle and scattered all over the golden origin cauldron. Tzi. White smoke shrouded the golden origin cauldron, placing a veil of mystery over it. Maintaining the right proportion between the various metals used in the alloy was important, but quenching played an even more crucial role in determining the final quality of the artifact. The hibernal spirit essence was the ultimate treasure for quenching artifacts, so most 9-star blacksmiths would usually bring a bottle around with them. Considering how many 9-star master teachers there were around the area, it was almost certain that one of them would have it. He is forging a weapon. It didn't take too long for the white smoke to dissipate, revealing the true form of the mysterious artifact that was extravagantly forged using heavenly flames. At the same time, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Ren Qingyuan and the other 9-star master teachers quickly turned their gazes over. What they saw left their lips twitching in horror, and they nearly keeled over. They expected the weapon forged by Zhang Xian, using the heavenly flame, to be mind-blowing. At the very least, it should be a magnificent great sage artifact on par with renowned legendary weapons in the world. Can anyone tell us what the heck is that black lump over there? It doesn't look like a cauldron. It doesn't look like a brick. Heck, it doesn't even qualify to be called a poop. After all the hammering using all those mystical forging techniques, this is all that you managed to smith? A 9-star master teacher tilted his head uncertainly as he examined the mysterious artifact in the air. It should be a cauldron, right? Doesn't look like it. To me, it seems more like a shoehorn. I think you're right. A brick-like shoehorn. Zhang Xian, ha ha ha. The golden origin cauldron have finally been upgraded. Thank you, master. As the quenching came to an end, an excited exclamation sounded in the air. But soon, a doubtful frown appeared on its distorted face as it asked, "Master, I don't feel right. Why does my head feel a little squarish? I seem to wobble quite a bit when I walk. Wait a minute, where are my legs?" "Your stubby legs have always been a major imperfection in your aesthetics, so I modified it a little for you," Zhang Xian replied without the slightest hint of redness on his face. "You altered it? Then where's my furnace?" The golden origin cauldron examined its body carefully for a very long, while but was unable to find its furnace, so it couldn't help but ask. It made your figure a little bulky, so I filled it up with the golden origin spirit stone. Zhang Xian replied with a reassuring voice. How do I forge artifacts or pills without a furnace? Those are just minor issues. You need to let go of some stuff in order to make space for better upgrades. Don't you feel like your bottom has grown much bigger? I made it this way to complement your fighting style. With this, you can better crush your opponent with your bottom. Zhang Xian remarked earnestly. Honestly speaking, I think you are much more dashing than before. Am I? Haha, I guess I'm asking the obvious. Who else could be more good-looking than me, the Golden Origin Cauldron? I should be able to attract many female cauldrons in the future. The Golden Origin Cauldron laughed heartily in satisfaction. Ren Qingyuan. The 9-star master teachers. Did this pair of master and servant have some kind of misconception as to what was considered beautiful in this world? Anyone with functioning eyes wouldn't be able to tell that it was a cauldron at all. Was it really fine for them to be so delusional? Oh well, geniuses tended to have their own quirks. Whatever that pleased them. Paying no heed to the stupefied crowd below, Zhang Xian examined the Golden Origin Cauldron before him carefully. Due to him adding too much Golden Origin Spirit Stone, it looked just nothing more than a lumpy mess. However, its prowess wasn't to be underestimated despite its misshapen exterior. It might have been unbelievable to anyone just looking at its exterior, but the current Golden Origin Cauldron was actually a true Great Sage artifact. Its weight had reached a level so frightening that even a sempiternal realm primary stage cultivator would be crushed into minced meat should the Golden Origin Cauldron's bottom fall on him. Alright, you should try and comprehend your strength and bring up your cultivation as soon as possible. Zhang Xian instructed, placing the satisfied Golden Origin Cauldron back into the myriad ant-hive nest. He began to observe the changes with his body through his spiritual perception. After undergoing the tempering of the Empyrean heavenly flame, not only had his cultivation advanced to Great Sage 1 Dan introspective convalescence realm, all of the impurities in his body had been cleaned out too. Every single one of his cells was pulsating with vitality comparable to a newborn. This is introspective convalescence realm consummation? Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in joy. It would usually take many years for an introspective convalescence realm primary stage cultivator to refine his body and advance his cultivation. However, through the tempering of the heavenly flame, his cultivation actually surged all the way up to consummation stage. Not only so, his physical body and jinqi had also begun taking on a golden sheen. From the looks of it, he only had to reinforce his cultivation for a bit before he was ready to push for a breakthrough to Aurit body realm. With my current jinqi cultivation and soul cultivation, along with the Golden Origin Cauldron and the Dragonbone Divine Spear, I should be able to put up a fight even against sempiternal realm pinnacle experts. Zhang Xian clenched his fist in agitation. Beyond Great Sage, there was a huge gap between each cultivation stage, thus making it extremely arduous and time-consuming to advance one's cultivation. Yet within a short span of a day, not only did he advance his primordial spirit to Aurit body realm consummation, he had also managed to push his jinqi cultivation up to introspective convalescence realm consummation. Even without relying on his overpowered artifacts, he was confident that he would be able to defeat the Xingming Sword Saints with ease. It hadn't been an easy day for him, but his efforts had truly paid off. Previously, he was completely helpless against sempiternal realm cultivators without igniting Kong Shi's blood droplet, so he had no choice but to flee from them. But with the current strength that he wielded, he could already put up a decent fight against them. However, I still need some time to get used to my powers before I can bring them out to their full potential. As he had advanced his jinqi cultivation and soul cultivation separately, there were still some imperfections in wielding them simultaneously. However, that wasn't a big problem. With a few days, he should be able to reconcile the differences between the two and heighten his fighting prowess. After confirming the changes in his body, Zhang Xian finally descended back to the ground. He had been in the shrine of Kong Shi when he summoned the heavenly flame tribulation, but he had practically swallowed the black flames that descended to earth whole. As such, the buildings in the surroundings didn't come to harm as a result of his cultivation ordeal. Shortly after he landed on the ground, Luo Ruoxin walked out from the shrine of Kong Shi as well. Pavilion Master Ren, I am extremely grateful to you. Zhang Xian walked up to Ren Qingyuan and clasped his fist. He was in the midst of thanking Ren Qingyuan for granting him access to the shrine of Kong Shi when the world around him suddenly tremored intensely, following which, another radiant sun rose from the horizons of the sky, cloaking the world in its blinding light. Within the rising sun, one could vaguely see an enormous shrine embedded in its depths, resembling a resplendent sky palace. The Temple of Confucius, Ren Qingyuan muttered beneath his breath with narrowed eyes. Similar to how there were other spatial quintessences aside from the spatial quintessence of sealing, the same applied to time quintessences as well. The time quintessence comprehended by the Zhang clan was the time quintessence of acceleration, which allowed a cultivator to accelerate his own time. Through accelerating one's time, a second of the opponent's time could translate into 10 seconds of one's time, thus making it appear as if the movements of the other person had slowed instead. But other than the time quintessence of acceleration, there were also the time quintessence of deceleration and the time quintessence of freezing. While the time quintessence of deceleration might not appear to be of much use to most cultivators, it was in fact the greatest weapon that human ancient sages had at the moment. It was through hibernation in the state of time deceleration that human ancient sages were able to lengthen their lifespan and continue fighting for mankind. On the other hand, the time quintessence of freezing was known to be the most difficult temporal law to comprehend. In terms of prowess, it was even stronger than the spatial quintessence of sealing. The spatial quintessence of sealing could immobilize a cultivator's physical body, but the cultivator would still retain his consciousness, allowing him to remain aware of the happenings around him. On the other hand, the time quintessence of freezing would even put one's consciousness to a stall. If a cultivator were to be killed in such a state, he would be thoroughly dead. He wouldn't even have a chance to revive himself. If Kong Shi had comprehended the time quintessence of freezing as well, just how powerful could he be? No matter how powerful Vicious was, he couldn't possibly have been a match for Kong Shi. Those are conjectures made by the later generation, so they might not be accurate. However, if one thing was for sure, Kong Shi had indeed infused his knowledge of temporal laws into the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn. If we could obtain the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn and acquire his heritage, that would indubitably be a huge boost to the forces of mankind. No matter how formidable the otherworldly demonic tribe may be, we would be able to quell them with ease. Ren Qingyuan said. The power and influence commanded by the Master-Teacher Pavilion were slowly accrued time. Back in the era shortly after Kong Shi's departure, the Master-Teacher Pavilion had only been founded not too long ago, and it was far from its current scale. While it had achieved a victory over the otherworldly demonic tribe, it didn't have the power or resources to destroy them once and for all. The most it could have done then was to exile them in the otherworldly battlefield. However, mankind had grown much stronger from back then. If they could just acquire the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn, they might just be able to accomplish what the predecessors had failed at. Indeed. Zhang Xian nodded in agreement. Mankind had grown collectively stronger since Kong Shi's era, but its number of top-notch experts was on the decline. No one had been able to reach ancient sage ever since 10,000 years ago. What mankind was severely lacking at the moment was fighting prowess in the top echelon. If they could obtain the heritage of the world's teacher, they would be able to resolve this problem and turn the tables on the otherworldly demonic tribe. 9-star master teachers of the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters, heed my orders. Other than those who are bound for the subterranean gallery, all of you are to head to Tsiufu right away. Since the Temple of Confucius has surfaced, it won't be long before it opens completely. Ren Qingyuan turned around and issued a command. Yes, the 9-star master teachers replied resoundingly before rushing off. Zhang Shi, since that the Temple of Confucius has surfaced, There's no doubt that the otherworldly demonic tribe will soon make its move. Do you want to move together with our Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters? Or do you intend to move independently? Ren Qingyuan asked. Zhang Xian was just about to give his reply when he saw Luo Ruoxin shaking her head lightly by the side. A perplexed frown surfaced on his forehead as he continued. I'm thankful for your thought and concern, but I would like to move independently. All right. Ren Qingyuan didn't seem to be too surprised by Zhang Xian's decision. With a nod of his head he said, Let's meet at Xifu then. After saying those words, Ren Qingyuan turned around and raised his hand. A large group of 9-star master teachers swiftly gathered around him. It seemed like they were going to discuss their plans to deal with the otherworldly demonic tribe after the opening of the Temple of Confucius. Let's head back. Zhang Xian beckoned to Luo Ruoxin, and the two of them quickly made their leave. In the blink of an eye, they were already out of the perimeter of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. Recalling Luo Ruoxin's action earlier, Zhang Xian turned to her and asked, With the opening of the Temple of Confucius, the otherworldly demonic tribe would surely make its move too. There's no doubt that they would mobilize their ancient sages too. There might be some restrictions being with the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, but it would also be safer under their protection. I'm curious to know why you chose to advise me to turn down their offer. In truth, Zhang Xian was also thinking of turning down the offer as well, but he didn't expect Luo Ruoxin to advise him to do the same too. Thus, he was a little curious to hear her thoughts on the matter. According to Yang Shi, there was a restriction that prevented ancient sages from entering the heart of the Temple of Confucius to retrieve the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn. However, make no mistake. Zhang Xian nodded in realization. All along, he thought that the Temple of Confucius only contained the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn and Kong Shi's heritage. However, from the looks of it now, it was likely to be similar to most ancient domains out there. There were many unexpected treasures and fortuitous encounters awaiting the cultivators there. Not only so, the Temple of Confucius harnesses the academic aura and academic fortune Kong Shi has left behind. Even if a cultivator fails to acquire anything at all, he would still be able to make significant progress in his cultivation just by cultivating within. Furthermore, it's said that Kong Shi's impartation of heavens will linger in the Temple of Confucius. As long as one listens carefully, one will be able to overcome any bottleneck one is facing with ease, Luo Ruoxin explained. The emergence of the Temple of Confucius is a major affair to all cultivators in the world. This is an opportunity that no one is willing to give up on, be it the human cultivators, the otherworldly demons, or the beast tribe. You must ensure that you are prepared if you wish to acquire anything from the Temple of Confucius. Advancing blindly in the Temple of Confucius isn't going to work out. Hearing those words, Zhang Xian lowered his head solemnly. The otherworldly demonic tribe weren't lacking experts, and there were many formidable beasts in the world too. Considering the allure of the Temple of Confucius, not even the Master Teacher Pavilion would dare to stop them carelessly. The implications were simply great. Stopping them would mean robbing them of the countless possibilities of what they could become. In the worst-case scenario, it could even lead to a full-blown war there and then. And if the otherworldly demonic tribe were to make a move then, mankind would really be in trouble. The best they could do at the moment was to acquire the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn as soon as possible and control the Temple of Confucius. This was the only way they could ensure that the situation wouldn't run amok. Kong Shi had forged 6 subordinate amulets and a prime amulet, which equated to a total of 7 celestial amulets of legacy. So far, it was known that the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, the Zhang clan, and the Luo clan possessed a subordinate amulet each. As for the remaining 3 subordinate amulets, their whereabouts were a mystery. However, if Zhang Xian had to fathom a guess, he felt that it was likely that the otherworldly demonic tribe and the 100 schools of philosophers had a subordinate amulet in their possession too. Furthermore, cultivators who possessed unique constitutions would be able to enter the Temple of Confucius as well. This meant that a considerable number of people would be able to enter the Temple of Confucius. It could really turn out to be dangerous if he didn't make ample preparations in advance. Putting everything aside, the cultivators of the 100 schools of philosophers had already shown that they had no lack of formidable artifacts. Even with the recent advancements in his cultivation, he would still have difficulties dealing with them. He didn't think that he could be considered weak anymore. But he wasn't so arrogant as to think that he could easily tower over all of the experts in the world. Let's return to the Zhang clan and see how their preparations are coming along. In truth, Zhang Xian didn't know much about the Temple of Confucius and how the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn could be acquired. However, it was likely that the Zhang clan had some exclusive intelligence and had been preparing for it since a long time ago. With such thoughts in mind, Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxing quickly left the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters and returned to the Zhang clan. With the advancements in Zhang Xian's cultivation, the spatial passageways he constructed through ripping open dimension rifts had become significantly stabler. It didn't take long before the massive Zhang clan appeared before their sights. As soon as he entered the Zhang clan, Zhang Xian could already sense that something was amiss. The Zhang clan always had huge crowds walking to and fro, but at this very moment, the entire place felt exceptionally empty. There was hardly anyone within sight. It took quite a bit of searching around before Zhang Xian finally found an elder. He asked anxiously, "What happened?" Nearly all of the cultivators of Saint Realm, and above in our Zhang clan, have made their way to the subterranean gallery to fend against the invasion of the otherworldly demonic tribe. The Xingming Sword Saints have already headed over too. Upon seeing Zhang Xian, the elder hurriedly greeted him with a bow, before reporting the current circumstances. They have headed to the subterranean galleries? Zhang Xian widened his eyes in realization. He had been too overwhelmed by the emergence of the Temple of Confucius that he had forgotten about the orders he had passed down earlier. Back when he was still at the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters, he had instructed the 3 premier clans to reinforce the Master-Teacher Pavilion in fending against the otherworldly demonic tribe. Which subterranean gallery they head to? Bring me there. Zhang Xian instructed imposingly. With the opening of the Temple of Confucius just around the corner, it was likely that the invasion of the otherworldly demonic tribe would further intensify. After all, there would not want to miss on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This was truly a quandary. The Temple of Confucius was important, but even if they managed to acquire the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn, it would be meaningless if losing the Master-Teacher continent was the price of it. The Great Codex of Spring and Autumn could enhance a cultivator's prowess immensely. However, to fight a war of such scale, they would require the might of countless soldiers. It would be a catastrophe if the otherworldly demonic tribe were to breach their defense at this point in time. It was no wonder why the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters was in such a panic, even going to the extent of clearing his 9-star Master-Teacher examination in such a slipshod manner. Otherwise, if they were to go through formal procedures, just proving his philosophy of pedagogy was likely to take several years already. Even though there is unrest in all 108 subterranean galleries, our scouts found that most of the subterranean galleries are only facing minor skirmishes at the moment. The local Master-Teacher pavilions should be able to suppress them. The true threat lies in 6 of the subterranean galleries, namely the Master-Teacher Pavilion Headquarters Subterranean Gallery, the Dragon Gate Subterranean Gallery, the ICC Subterranean Gallery, the Cloud Sea Subterranean Gallery, the Zhang Clan's Drakatiger Mountain Subterranean Gallery, and the Luo Clan's Starcluster Subterranean Gallery. There are many 9-star Master Teachers to deal with the Subterranean Gallery over at the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters side, so they don't require any assistance at the moment. Over at the Dragon Gate Subterranean Gallery and the Cloud Sea Subterranean Gallery, the progeny of combat, Zheng Yang, has officially assumed the title of the Master of the Combat Master Hall and led countless combat masters to quell the unrest in those 2 places. As for the ICC Subterranean Gallery, the Glacier Plain Court, the Yuan Clan, the Sanctum of Sages, and the Spirit Awakener Guild have all liaised with one another and sent their forces over to stabilize the region. The other sage clans, occupation guilds, and powers are patrolling the other subterranean galleries to lend their aid wherever required. Last but not least, the Jiang clan is moving alongside with both the Zhang clan and the Luo clan to guard the Dracatiger Mountain Subterranean Gallery and Starkluster Subterranean Gallery. The otherworldly demons are particularly rampant in the Dracatiger Mountain Subterranean Gallery and the Starkluster Subterranean Gallery, and the seals which ancient sage Chiu who have left behind are having trouble fending them off. As such, all master teachers of 6-star and above in the Zhang clan are all mobilized to the Subterranean Gallery to bolster the defenses. The elder explained, I am left in charge of taking care of the clan while the others are away. Should the situation turn for the worse, I'm responsible for moving our clan members away, so as to preserve the lineage of our Zhang clan. Dracatiger Mountain Subterranean Gallery? In other words, there is subterranean gallery is right beneath us? Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. He knew that some of the regional master teacher pavilion branches were responsible for suppressing the subterranean galleries across the continent, such as the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. He should have guessed that it would have been the same for the Zhang clan as well. The Dracatiger Mountain was right next to the Zhang clan, and since the subterranean gallery was named as such, it was likely to be in the vicinity. The entrance is right beneath our Zhang clan. If you wish to enter, I can bring you over right now. The elder replied, Bring me over. I wish to take a look. Zhang Xian instructed, putting aside the fact that the Temple of Confucius wasn't open yet. Even if it was, it still wouldn't be as important as quelling the invasion of the otherworldly demonic tribe. Clan head, please follow me. Without any hesitation, the elder led the way forward. Before long, they arrived at their destination. This is the mausoleum of the Zhang clan? Zhang Xian was taken aback. That's right. The subterranean gallery is located beneath our mausoleum. The elder replied, using heroic spirits of the Zhang clan's predecessors to suppress the subterranean gallery. Zhang Xian murmured quietly. This practice was similar to that of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. Each principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy would deposit a sliver of their will at the entrance of the subterranean gallery, so as to reinforce the seal, thus preventing the otherworldly demonic tribe from stepping onto the Master Teacher continent. Only the heroic spirits of our predecessors are able to suppress the otherworldly demons and prevent them from entering the Master Teacher continent. Clan head, the subterranean gallery is right ahead. I still have some other matters to attend to, so I'll have to take my leave right now. The elder bade his farewell before leaving the area. If the otherworldly demonic tribe were to breach the defenses set up by the Zhang clan and the Jiang clan, their very first point of contact with the Master Teacher continent would be the Zhang clan. Thus, they had to be prepared to move the members of the Zhang clan at any moment. Otherwise, if even the younger generation were to lose their lives in this war, mankind would have nothing to oppose the otherworldly demonic tribe anymore. Zhang Xian nodded before making his way into the Zhang clan mausoleum together with Luo Ruoxin. There were countless stone tablets lying all around. Taking a closer look, there was a name inscribed on each of the stone tablets. These were the strongest experts of the Zhang clan in their era, but it was a pity that they were unable to escape the restraints of time. All that was left of them was a fistful of yellow dust. No matter how talented a person was in his lifetime, in the passing of tens of thousands of years, all that would remain of them were just lonely names on blocks of stones. It's due to their sacrifice that mankind is able to enjoy the prosperity and stability it does at the moment. Without them, the world would have already been plunged in chaos. Zhang Xian was never an emotional person. Ever since transcending over, due to his previous life, he had always viewed this world with nonchalance. However, when he saw the students of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy charging fearlessly in the face of battle, and countless master teachers staking their life on the line in a subterranean gallery, to be honest, it had truly moved him. His initial impression of the Zhang clan was horrid, But when he saw the countless stone tablets lying around him, he couldn't help but sigh sorrowfully. It was not just due to its strength and accumulation that the Zhang clan became the #1 sage clan. More than that, it was about what they had done. For tens of thousands of years, they had kept the otherworldly demonic tribe suppressed in the subterranean galleries. It was due to their contribution and countless sacrifices that mankind enjoyed the current peace it did. Without them, mankind would have never prospered and developed so far. Boom! While Zhang Xian was deep in thought, he suddenly felt the ground beneath him shaking intensely. Spurts of malevolent aura burst forth from beneath the ground. Wang! Barely after the spurts of malevolent aura reached the surface, the tombstones swiftly released a brilliant light reminiscent of the night illumination pearls. Gradually, the malevolent aura dissipated silently. The fact that the malevolent aura is able to reach here means that the seal beneath is swiftly approaching its limit. I should quickly take a look, Zhang Xian thought. Having been to the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy's subterranean gallery, he was familiar with this situation. Without any hesitation, he beckoned Luo Ruoxin and quickly advanced forward. Soon, they arrived before a massive sculpture. It was a sculpture of the founder of the Zhang clan. Zhang Xian placed his hand on it. Wang! With a brilliant burst of light, both he and Luo Ruoxin disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, they were already standing in the midst of darkness. Malevolent aura suffused the area, leaving one with a slight feeling of discomfort. The two of them quickly headed forward. Soon, they arrived at a massive fortress. This subterranean gallery was clearly much larger than the one beneath the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. The fortress was formidable as well. There were all kinds of active formations shrouding it, keeping any enemy at bay. Entering the fortress, Zhang Xian immediately saw countless members of the Zhang clan. They were standing in a neat formation, reminiscent of soldiers marching into war. Clan head. Upon seeing Zhang Xian, the managing elder quickly rushed forward to greet him. What's the current situation? Zhang Xian asked. It doesn't look too optimistic. The otherworldly demonic tribe has already launched 10 attacks so far, and both sides have already sustained heavy losses. Due to the hindrance of the seal, the losses suffered by the otherworldly demonic tribe is considerably greater than ours. However, I fear that we won't be able to last too long against their crazed attacks. The elder said worriedly. How is the seal at the moment? Zhang Xian asked. I'm not too sure at the moment. Our men were still in control of the area a while ago, but they have been overrun by the otherworldly demonic tribe. I fear that we are unable to approach the seal at the moment. The elder replied. We have lost control over the seal. Isn't that extremely disadvantageous to us? With the experts of our Zhang clan, how did we lose control over the seal? Zhang Xian widened his eyes in disbelief. The main reason why the otherworldly demonic tribe was unable to launch large-scale attacks previously was due to the obstruction of the spatial seals. The spatial seals left behind by ancient sage Qiu Wu were incredibly powerful. Humans were able to pass through the seals freely, but not the otherworldly demonic tribe. Thus, the defensive forces only had to camp outside the seal and slay any otherworldly demons who managed to slip past the seal by luck. If the otherworldly demonic tribe were to take control of the seal, wouldn't they be able to squeeze as many people as they wanted into the subterranean gallery? This meant that their forces would grow swiftly with time. The Zhang clan was powerful, but it wasn't strong enough to stand against the unhindered prowess of the otherworldly demonic tribe. They wouldn't stand a chance at all. I was the one who ordered the members of the Zhang clan to retreat. Before the elder could answer the question, another imposing voice had already echoed by the side. Turning his head over, Zhang Xian saw his parents, Sword Saint Xing and Sword Saint Meng, walking over with widened strides. Hearing the words that had come from Sword Saint Xing, Zhang Xian frowned. They have already completely breached the seal left behind by ancient sage Qiu Wu, so there isn't any point guarding the area anymore. Rather than to expend our forces on a collapsed seal, it would be much better for us to guard this fortress instead. With the protection of the formations here, we will allow us to bring our losses down to the minimum. Sword Saint Xing explained grimly. The seal has been breached. Zhang Xian clenched his fists tightly. Indeed, the otherworldly demonic tribe has truly resolved themselves this time around. They are determined to push their way into the master-teacher continent no matter how much losses they suffer. Sword Saint Xing shook his head. He beckoned with his hand and said, "Follow me." They quickly made their ways to the fortress walls. Gazing forward from the sentry tower, he swiftly noticed the billowing killing aura that had congregated in the distance. Countless otherworldly demons were standing in an orderly formation, reminiscent of an army. Despite their stationary position, their very presence emanated great pressure on those in the fortress. There were many tents and temporary structures erected around the army. From the looks of it, it seemed like the otherworldly demons also knew that it wouldn't be easy for them to overrun the fortress. The seal has been breached, which means that the otherworldly demons can easily traverse into the subterranean gallery. There's no doubt that they are biding their time, so that more and more of their brethren could reinforce them. If this were to continue on, we might potentially lose control of this subterranean gallery. Zhang Xian analyzed with a deep frown. I know this as well, but having fought with the otherworldly demons for innumerable years, we are well aware of the extent of their forces. Given that they are assaulting all 108 subterranean galleries simultaneously, the number of allies they will be able to gather here is going to be terribly limited. If they really wielded the strength to overrun all 108 subterranean galleries simultaneously, mankind would have already gone extinct many years ago. Sword Saint Xing replied confidently. There was an irreconcilable grudge between mankind and the otherworldly demonic tribe. If the otherworldly demons were truly capable of bringing down all of the subterranean galleries simultaneously, they would have already done so a long time ago. There was no reason for them to contend with living in the barren otherworldly battlefield for so many years, suffering so many grievances. You are saying that they are just putting on an act of bravado? Zhang Xian frowned doubtfully. I wouldn't say that it's just an act of bravado, but aside from waiting for the reinforcement from their allies, it's likely that they are held back partially by fear too. They are observing the circumstances in the other subterranean galleries before deciding whether they should launch a decisive assault. If their forces were to be defeated in the other subterranean galleries, it would be meaningless even if they were to claim this one. Without reinforcement, it would only be a matter of time before we force them back into the otherworldly battlefield. Naturally, it would be meaningless for them to incur disproportionate losses just to claim a plot of land temporarily. On the other hand, if the otherworldly demonic tribe were to successfully overrun the other subterranean galleries, we would be in grave danger too. Sword Saint Xing said. Zhang Xian pondered over those words for a moment before nodding. You're right. Nevertheless, this was just a hypothesis on their part at the moment. Furthermore, even if just a single subterranean gallery were to be breached, mankind would surely sustain severe losses. Thus, it was of utmost importance for them to remain on their guard. Wait a moment. Could the same situation be happening in the other subterranean galleries? If that's the case, could this be a diversion tactic? Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes in astonishment as a thought surfaced in his mind. A diversion tactic? Sword Saint Xing, as well as the other elders of the Zhang clan, frowned in confusion. There didn't seem to be anything more important than claiming the subterranean galleries that the otherworldly demonic tribe had to divert their attention for. You have been in the subterranean gallery all this while, so it's no wonder you haven't heard of it yet. Just a moment ago, the Temple of Confucius has emerged. It's likely that it'll open very soon. For the otherworldly demonic tribe to invade all of the subterranean galleries at such a point in time and draw the experts of mankind here. Could they be buying time? While acting as if they are waiting for reinforcements, are they just tying down our men here so that we won't be able to focus our manpower on the Temple of Confucius? Zhang Xian revealed his thought. Having crossed blows with mankind many times, the otherworldly demonic tribe were definitely aware that they would sustain massive losses if they were to push ahead with their attacks on the master-teacher continent at this point in time. This was similar to the concept of mutually assured destruction in his previous life. Even if the otherworldly demonic tribe had the power to claim the Master Teacher continent, if they had to sustain heavy casualties in order to do so, was it really still meaningful for them to do so? Was this a price they were willing to pay in exchange for defeating mankind? And not to mention, mankind wasn't the only major power on the Master Teacher continent. It was true that the Temple of Confucius and the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn were important, but was it so important that they had to sacrifice the lives of so many otherworldly demons to acquire it? In other words, could the reason why they weren't in a rush to attack be because they had already achieved their motives? They had already stalled the most of the experts of mankind here, which meant that they would be in an advantageous position in the fight over the Temple of Confucius. This, Sword Saint Xing fell silent. He found his son's conjecture to be very plausible too. If the otherworldly demonic tribe truly wanted to take down mankind, there was no reason for them to disperse their forces across 108 subterranean galleries. The dispersion of forces would make it much more troublesome for mankind to cope with their assault, but it would hinder them from launching a decisive assault either. It would have been much more efficient if they had just focused their forces on a couple of subterranean galleries. Had they resorted to concentrated, surprise attacks on a couple of the more loosely guarded subterranean galleries, their chances of success would have been much higher. Even if the otherworldly demons were to keep us preoccupied at the subterranean galleries, they wouldn't be able to dominate the Temple of Confucius with just a small handful of experts. If what you said is true, it would mean that the otherworldly demonic tribe has already snuck most of their experts over to the Master Teacher continent. Sword Saint Xing said gravely. Tens of thousands of years of accumulation had filled the ranks of the Master Teacher Pavilion with countless experts. With the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn was at stake over here, there was no way the Master Teacher Pavilion was going to hold back. Without a doubt, the Grand Elders and Old Ancestors of the Master Teacher Pavilion were going to emerge from their seclusion as well. It would seem to the common populace that they had already disappeared into the annals of history, but there was no way to tell for certain if they had truly passed away or not. Some of them would have already passed away, but there was bound to be a handful who had chosen to go into hibernation, just like the ancient sages. They were biding their time for the opportunity that would allow them to make a breakthrough in their cultivation. It would appear on the surface that Yang Shi was the strongest expert beneath the ancient sages, but it would do to remember that he was only in his 800s. Given how large the Master Teacher continent was, there were bound to be seniors who had dominated the eras prior to him, especially since the lifespan of a great sage was 1,500 years. Even if some had passed away, there had to be some who were still living and kicking. Had Temple of Confucius not opened, they might have still chosen to remain in seclusion. This way, they would be able to lessen the loss of their vitality and lengthen their lifespans as long as possible. However, with the opening of the Temple of Confucius just around the corner, they were bound to make a move. If anything, it was likely that the key to achieving a breakthrough to ancient sage lay within the Temple of Confucius. Perhaps they might even find treasures that would allow them to lengthen their lifespan. This was the very opportunity they were waiting for, so there was no way they would remain impassive before it. And there was just no way the otherworldly demonic tribe would have failed to consider this in their plans. Since they were willing to go to the extent of sacrificing a significant number of their brethren in order to stall the experts of the Master Teacher Pavilion and the major powers, there was no doubt that they were determined to claim the Temple of Confucius. Naturally, they would have to dispatch a sufficiently powerful force into the Master Teacher continent in order to ensure that they would achieve their goal. I have encountered some otherworldly demons on the Master Teacher continent not too long ago. Most of them were at Sempiternal Realm, and there were even ancient sages amongst them. Zhang Xian replied with a nod. Back when he was at the Harvest Valley City Seer Guild, he had slain 5 great sage, for Dan Sempiternal Realm otherworldly demons. The fighting prowess they commanded was noteworthy, possibly on par with the Grand Elders of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. Furthermore, he even met a living ancient sage there. Given how even the otherworldly demon ancient sages were able to circumvent the detection of the Master-Teacher Pavilion, he couldn't begin to imagine just how many otherworldly demons had successfully infiltrated the Master-Teacher continent. Just the very thought of it sent shudders down his spine. In the worst-case scenario, perhaps the forces before them were all ordinary soldiers bearing the mission to stall them here. In truth, the great sage otherworldly demons had already successfully infiltrated the Master-Teacher continent. Did you encounter any great sage otherworldly demons in the battle so far? Zhang Xian asked. While we were guarding the seal, your father and I encountered an expert and clashed with him. He was a fearsome foe. If not for our collaborative swordsmanship, we might not have been able to return alive. That being said, I still sustained some injuries in the fight, Sword Saint Meng replied. You are injured? Zhang Xian quickly turned a worried look over. Don't worry, it's nothing major. I have already consumed a recovery pill. Seeing that her son was worried about her, Sword Saint Meng replied with a reassuring smile. That's a relief. Zhang Xian nodded. An opponent which requires your collaborative swordsmanship to deal with is bound to be at sempiternal realm, at the very minimum. The Xingming Sword Saints were at Great Sage 3 Dan Intuitive Impulse Realm Consummation, but the prowess they were able to bring out through their collaborative swordsmanship was beyond what an average sempiternal realm cultivator would be able to deal with. If Sword Saint Meng still ended up sustaining some injuries, even after they had executed your collaborative swordsmanship, it would mean to say that the opponent they had faced was extremely powerful. If the goal of the otherworldly demonic tribe was to claim dominance in the Temple of Confucius, they should have dispatched all of their top experts to the Master-Teacher continent. It was truly surprising to hear that there would still be a sempiternal realm cultivator in the ranks of the enemy. Of course, it was still too early to come to a conclusion at this point in time, but this did weaken the credibility of his argument. No matter what their motive is, I want to take a look at it personally to verify it. It won't do for us to continue biding our time here blindly. Unable to make sense out of the matter, Zhang Xian raised his head and said, at this rate, mankind would find itself losing a large group of experts for the Temple of Confucius. If the otherworldly demonic tribe successfully amassed most of the treasures in the Temple of Confucius, as a result of that, mankind would be placed in an even more disadvantageous position in the war. However, with a massive army of the otherworldly demonic tribe standing right before them, they couldn't afford to just leave their posts and reinforce the Temple of Confucius either. If his conjecture was true, the ideal plan would be to assault the army before them right now and regain control over the seal as soon as possible before reinforcing the Temple of Confucius. However, if his conjecture were to be false, they would be abandoning the protection of the formation, and this was an extremely risky move. Thus, the only thing he could do at the moment was to scout the situation himself and uncover the true intentions of the otherworldly demonic tribe. You wish to take a look personally? That won't do. You are the head of the 3 premier clans and the Sanctum of Sages. If something were to happen to you, it would be a huge setback to mankind. Sword Saint Xing immediately expressed his vehement opposition toward Zhang Xian's decision. His son wielded massive influence in mankind, possibly even greater than Ren Qingyuan and Yang Shi. There was no doubt that he would play a crucial role in uniting the forces of mankind in the war against the otherworldly demonic tribe. They couldn't afford to allow him to take such a risk. If he were to be caught by the otherworldly demonic tribe while scouting the situation, the chances of him returning alive were extremely slim. Even if they were to mobilize the full prowess of the Zhang clan to rescue him, it was unlikely that the operation would in their favor. It was the greatest blessing of mankind for someone who wielded considerable influence in most major powers of the Master-Teacher continent to appear at this juncture. Such a figure could easily become a binding force in constructing an allied army of mankind. If he were to pass away, mankind would be scattered once more. It would be a huge setback in the war against the powerful otherworldly demons. You can't go. Sword Saint Meng exclaimed in fright too. I have comprehended the spatial quintessence of sealing. I understand that the spatial seal has been breached. and I believe that I might be able to mend it. If I were to succeed, the otherworldly demons wouldn't be able to bring in their reinforcements easily, thus increasing our likelihood of a victory. Don't worry, I have plenty of life preservation means up my sleeves. Besides, I'm just going to see what they are up to. It's not as if I'm going to start a battle with them or anything. They won't be able to find me easily. Knowing their worries, Zhang Xian reassured with a smile. But Sword Saint Meng was still extremely worried. This is something I have to do. I'll just be scouting for intelligence, so the level of danger would be much lower. If you don't believe me, you can ask Ruoxin, Zhang Xian said. Zhang Xian will be fine if it's just simple scouting, Luo Ruoxin reassured with a nod. Her disguise amulet was able to disguise even one's bloodline, so he wouldn't face any trouble disguising as an otherworldly demon. Besides, even if something were to happen, Zhang Xian had the ability to get away as long as his opponent wasn't an ancient sage. There was indeed nothing to worry about. Then, you must make sure to proceed with utmost caution. If you were to notice anything amiss, head back right away. Don't push yourself, all right? Seeing that even Luo Ruoxin had said such words, Sword Saint Meng hesitated for a moment before reluctantly nodding in agreement. I will, Zhang Xian replied with a smile. Taking a deep breath, he leaped down from the city walls. While descending down, his figure suddenly vanished without a trace before everyone's eyes. How did our clan head disappear? I can't sense him with my spiritual perception, the elders exclaimed with widened eyes. It's a maneuver of the spatial quintessence of sealing. Through sealing the space around his body, he is able to redirect light and spiritual perception away from him, thus making it nigh impossible to perceive his presence. Unless one's soul cultivation or comprehension of space reaches a certain level, it would be impossible to find him, Luo Ruoxin explained to the confused crowd. Realization dawned upon the crowd. They didn't know that it was possible to manipulate space in such a manner to produce such mystical effects. It was no wonder why the spatial quintessence of sealing was the highest heritage of the Luo clan. Its prowess truly didn't disappoint. If they were able to conceal their figure through such a method as well, it would effectively mean that they could march right into the enemy camp openly without catching anyone's notice. They were still a little worried over the safety of their clan head a moment ago, but after seeing what he was capable of, their hearts were put at ease. With the ability to conceal himself and the ability to accelerate time, he would surely be able to overcome any danger and return safely. So, using the spatial quintessence of sealing, Zhang Xian concealed his figure and quickly advanced toward the encampment of the otherworldly demonic tribe. It didn't take long for him to arrive before the enemy barracks and halted his footsteps. Cruck, cruck, cruck. His bones and muscles began warping, and his height by a chi. By the time he was done, he looked no different from any other otherworldly demons. Of course, he didn't neglect to alter his aura either. This time around, however, he held himself back quite a bit such that the killing intent he emanated wasn't as pure as what it would ordinarily be. It was even beneath the level of Greenleaf King and the others, no different from an ordinary soldier in the otherworldly demonic tribe. After completing his disguise, he descended onto the ground. He swiftly found a group of patrolling soldiers and discreetly crept up to the otherworldly demon soldier, lagging behind at the back. Raising his finger, he tapped the back of the otherworldly demon soldier lightly. Puha! It was a silent first blood. He hurriedly kept the corpse of the otherworldly demon soldier into his storage ring. After cleaning up the scene, he quickly morphed his appearance into that of the otherworldly demon soldier. Of course, he wouldn't forget something as basic as to change his clothes as well. So, when he revealed his figure once more, he was already wearing a heavy set of armor with a long spear in his hand. He broke free of the group he was following and marched his way into the main encampment. The otherworldly demons were very particular with their defenses. It was apparent with a swift glance that the defensive formations they had set up were the work of an expert. It was fortunate that Sword Saint Xing had made the call to stand guard at the fortress. If they had really attempted to breach these formations, the Zhang clan could very well lose half of its entire army. These formations are slightly dissimilar to those of the Formation Master Guild. They are inscribed using the runes of the otherworldly demonic tribe. Those who step into these formations will be struck by a gush of killing intent, placing them in a state of disorientation. Zhang Xian thought as he analyzed the formations carefully. He had encountered similar formations when he descended into the subterranean gallery the first time around. However, the formations he had seen back then could only be said to be mediocre compared to those standing before him right now. Even Saint Nine Dan experts would suffer a bout of lightheadedness if they were to barge into the formations carelessly, let alone weaker cultivators. Of course, due to their unique constitution, these formations wouldn't affect otherworldly demons. As Zhang Xian proceeded ahead, he carefully analyzed the structure of the formations and deduced the locations of their cruxes. Following which, he discreetly infused his Heaven's Path Shinchi into those formations. However, he didn't rush into destroying them. He was here to scout intelligence. If he were to destroy the formations right now, it would only expose the presence of a spy within the encampment, thus tightening the security of the base. That would only make it harder for him to do his job. So far, the cultivation of the otherworldly demons he had encountered ranged from Saint 3 Dan to Saint 9 Dan. He hadn't encountered any great sage otherworldly demon yet, but they could just be located in the deeper parts of the encampment. The Qingtian lineage can't even begin to compare to this. Zhang Xian couldn't help but shake his head. The otherworldly demon kings of the Qingtian lineage had only barely reached primordial spirit realm, and even the Qingtian emperor himself was only at Saint 6 Dan Grand Dominion realm. That bit of fighting prowess was truly pathetic compared to the troops right before him. From the looks of it, it seemed like there was a massive gap in abilities even amongst fellow emperors. Of course, it could also be possible that the Qingtian lineage was an exception. It was a pity that Vicious was still in a state of hibernation at the moment. Otherwise, Vicious would surely have regained another significant portion of his memories after fusing with his upper body. He would be able to ask the latter about the circumstances in the otherworldly demonic tribe, and take precautions against them accordingly. You are supposed to patrol the area, and check if there are any threats in the area. Why are you loitering around here? All of a sudden, Zhang Xian heard a harsh voice sounding behind him. Turning his head around, he saw an otherworldly demon, wearing a black helmet walking toward him, with a displeased frown on his forehead. The otherworldly demon was at Saint 8 Dan. Judging from his tone, it seemed like he was a relatively high-ranking officer in the army. He spoke in the native tongue of the otherworldly demonic tribe. Fortunately, Zhang Xian had already learned the language the first time he descended into a subterranean gallery. In fact, it was using the language that he managed to fool the Golden Leaf King and the Green Leaf King into killing one another. Someone has just switched places with me, so I came back to the encampment to rest a while. Zhang Xian quickly lowered his head and bowed. Zhang Xian noted that the otherworldly demon soldier had just switched shift with another group, and that was also the primary reason why he chose to attack the latter. If the otherworldly demon soldier was still on his shift, it might have taken him a bit more trouble to switch positions with him. Follow me. There's something I need you to do. The black helmet otherworldly demon harumphed coldly as he beckoned Zhang Xian to follow him. Yes, sir. In order not to give himself away, Zhang Xian obediently followed the black helmet otherworldly demon. The black helmet otherworldly demon proceeded on to assemble 10 other otherworldly demon soldiers. The soldiers that he had picked out were all the lowest Saint 3 Dan soldiers, similar to the one which Zhang Xian was disguised as. What does General Hour want us to do? Following obediently behind the black helmet otherworldly demon, one of the otherworldly demon soldiers asked the group discreetly. I'm not too sure either, but I guess it should be some kind of construction work. The otherworldly demon beside shook his head and replied. Construction? Haven't we completed the construction of the base already? Don't ask unnecessary questions. We just have to do whatever General Hour orders us to do. Poke your noses in where it doesn't belong, and you won't even know how you died. One of the otherworldly demon soldiers harumphed impatiently, and the crowd fell silent. That fellow is called General Hour? Zhang Xian took careful note of the name. The black helmet otherworldly demon hadn't executed any battle technique yet, so he had no way of knowing the other party's identity. In any case, he should remember the name first so as to not mess up later on. Stop. After walking for a while, they stopped before a peculiarly designed building. The black helmet General Hour stepped forward, pushed open the door, and led the way in. The interiors of the building appeared empty. There were only a couple of massive boxes placed within. Each of these boxes was roughly a person tall, and they were placed in an orderly fashion, roughly 10 meters apart from one another. Sensing that something was amiss over here, Zhang Xian took a closer look at the boxes. There was no pulsation of power coming from the boxes, which indicated that it wasn't inscribed with any formations or seals. I want you all to move the boxes over to the other side, General Hour ordered. He gathered us here just to move a couple of boxes? Zhang Xian thought in bewilderment. The other otherworldly demon soldiers were confused by the situation before them as well. At their cultivation realm, they could easily use their spiritual perception to keep anything into their storage ring and place them elsewhere. Yet they were all gathered here to accomplish something as easy as this? What are you all dawdling for? Hurry up. Seeing that no one was moving at all, General Hour's face darkened. You just have to do what is ordered of you. There's no need for you to know anything at all. Yes, sir. Not daring to protest against their superior, they hurriedly carried the boxes and brought them out of the building. These boxes weren't heavy at all. Zhang Xian attempted to extend his spiritual perception through the box to take a peek at what was placed within, but as if there was a seal cast over its exterior, his spiritual perception was unable to seep in at all. He tried using the Library of Heaven's path as well, but he could only compile information on the box, but not what was within it. Eventually, he could only give up on it and obediently follow the crowd out. Make sure the boxes are the same distances away from one another, General Air ordered sternly. As Saint Threedan cultivators, each of the otherworldly demon soldiers possessed exceptional memory. They quickly got into the same formation as the boxes when they first saw them in the building. Good. Seeing the formation put up by the crowd, General Air nodded in satisfaction before gesturing them to head forward. Maintaining the same distance amongst one another, they began marching forward. What is the purpose of maintaining the distances amongst the boxes? Zhang Xian frowned in incomprehension. If these boxes were parts of a formation or something, he could still understand the need to maintain their positions relative to one another. However, the fact that he couldn't feel any pulsations of energy from them showed that that wasn't the case. Thus, was there really a need to be so concerned with such a minor detail? More importantly, why couldn't they move the boxes with their storage rings instead? Perplexed by the peculiar situation, Zhang Xian activated his eye of insight and observed his surroundings carefully. With a look, his body stiffened in astonishment. This feeling. It's similar to how I felt whenever I enter a seer guild. They are trying to conceal something from the heavens. 33, 3 centimeters. Affected by the notion that the boxes were positioned to create some sort of mysterious formation, his thoughts didn't wander in such a direction earlier. However, under the discerning gaze of the Eye of Insight, he swiftly noticed an anomaly. There was nothing wrong with the boxes individually, but when they were placed in a specific formation, it created a feeling which was strikingly similar to the sensation he felt when he entered a seer guild. It was possible to use spiritual perception and all other means on a seer guild, but it was impossible to use divination arts on the seer guild. Of course, this didn't mean to say that seers were unable to divine from within the seer guild. It only meant that it was impossible to divine anyone and anything within the seer guild. In a sense, it was similar to a one-sided mirror, where those within the seer guild were able to divine what was outside, but those outside were unable to divine what was within the seer guild. Upper 9 paths, middle 9 paths, and lower 9 paths. The word 9 in each of these terms symbolized the idea of the extremities. It didn't mean that there were only 9 occupations in each of these paths. In fact, there were way more than 30 recognized official occupations in the world. There were numerous occupations which Zhang Xian had never learned before. Nevertheless, with the books he had read over the past year, he was still able to participate in a conversation regarding their technicalities. But when it came to seer, he really didn't know a thing at all. He had attempted to learn divination art within a seer guild before, but as soon as he attempted to read them, countless bolts of lightning fell from the heavens. The Library of Heaven's path in his mind represented the heavens, and the seers who sought to peer into the secrets of the heavens were no different than thieves to them. Naturally, the Library of Heaven's path wouldn't allow for the existence of any divination arts in its line of sight, which effectively made it impossible for him to learn them too. It was because of this that he had no choice but to give up on the notion of learning anything relating to divination. Nevertheless, he could still distinctly recognize the sensation he felt within a seer guild, and it was identical to what he was feeling at the moment. I thought that the entire seer guild had colluded with the otherworldly demonic tribe to help them sneak onto the master-teacher continent, but that might not necessarily be the case. Zhang Xian thought. Ever since the theft of Vicious Upper Body, he had been thinking that the entire seer guild had betrayed mankind. Otherwise, they should have divined the arrival of the otherworldly demon ancient sages into the master-teacher continent and reported it to the master-teacher pavilion headquarters. But thinking about it again, they didn't need the cooperation of the entire seer guild for that. All they needed was a 9-star seer to collude with them in order to create such artifacts. With these anti-divination artifacts, they would be able to conceal the ancient sages from the heavens, thus bypassing the divination of the entire seer guild. But why would these anti-divination artifacts be here? Unless it's a prolonged war, our seers are unlikely to pose much threat to the otherworldly demonic tribe. Or could it be that they were planning to use it to assassinate the Xingming Sword Saints? Zhang Xian's mind swiftly whirred into action. With their ability to divine the future, seers were indeed troublesome individuals to deal with. However, they had their limitations too. They were only able to divine specific individuals, or the general state of matters, so they wouldn't be of much help in uncovering crucial military intelligence, such as the enemy's strategies and plans. As a result of that, their utility in massive and chaotic battles was severely limited. For this reason, the Zhang clan didn't bring any of its seers to the battlefield either. The otherworldly demonic tribe should have known this too, so it was likely that these boxes weren't prepared in order to deal with the seers. And putting aside the seers, the only ones who would be affected by the anti-divination artifacts were the Xingming Sword Saints instead. The Xingming Sword Saints were at Great Sage 3 Dan Intuitive Impulse Realm, which allowed them to instinctively sense danger and take actions to avoid it. The boxes would seal that ability of theirs too, thus making it much easier for them to carry out an assassination. It's one thing if I am unaware of it, but now that I have discovered such a matter, I won't stand on ceremony then. Zhang Xian thought as his lips crept up. Others might still have to resort to physical attacks in order to destroy these anti-divination artifacts. But he was different. All he had to do was to tap into his Library of Heaven's path, and he would be able to bring lightning upon them. I shouldn't rush into it first. I have already promised Little Tribulation that I would offer him some pointers. If I were to summon him over, I should at least offer him some guidance, so he would be able to grow stronger. If I could make him strong enough to destroy all of these otherworldly demons, that would be for the best, Zhang Xian thought. It wasn't too easy to summon a lightning tribulation in the subterranean gallery, but with the provocation from these blasphemous artifacts, the heavens would surely answer the calls of the Library of Heaven's path and bring retribution down upon these heathens. Just that, he had come encountered with the lightning tribulation that brought retribution to seers several times in the past, but unlike the wonderful indiscriminate area of effect devastation typical to cultivation ordeals, this lightning tribulation only struck specific artifacts or individuals. What did he have to do in order to summon a sufficiently large lightning tribulation to kill all of these otherworldly demons? these otherworldly demons wouldn't be as law-abiding as the cultivators from the Glacier Plain Court and Sanctum of Sages. If a lightning tribulation were to appear above them right now, they would dispel it right away before it could even grow into anything. Against an entire army, there was no way a lightning tribulation could stand a chance. Otherwise, they could simply dispatch a random chap on the verge of a breakthrough into the heart of the enemy base and call forth a lightning tribulation to annihilate the enemy. Besides, ordinary lightning tribulation wouldn't pose much of a threat to cultivators beyond Orit body realm, as long as they were prepared for it. At their level, only heavenly flames would be able to pose some danger to them. The otherworldly demon, who had fought the Xingming Sword Saints to a draw, was likely to be at sempiternal realm at the very minimum, so ordinary lightning tribulations were definitely not of much use against him. If I want to do it, I'll have to summon a sufficiently powerful lightning tribulation right from the start. Otherwise, I'll only alarm them, Zhang Xian thought as he suppressed his urge to use the Library of Heaven's Path. Halt! Even though Zhang Xian's thoughts were flying around the place, he was still able to continue walking in file with the otherworldly demon soldiers. They traveled for over several li before General Hour finally raised his hand and halted them. Seeing that the crowd had stopped their footsteps, Zhang Xian didn't dare to display any anomaly either. Place the boxes down here, and you may return. Yes, sir. The crowd nodded their heads hurriedly. They quickly put down the boxes down before leaving the area. Zhang Xian left along with the departing otherworldly demon soldiers as well. But after traveling some distance away, he discreetly cast a spatial seal over himself, thus concealing himself from view, before sneaking back. Shortly after he returned to the area, he saw a huge otherworldly demon walking over. The huge otherworldly demon emanated an aura far stronger than the others, giving rise to an incredibly intimidating presence. The powerful killing intent he harnessed produced an ink-like manifestation around him. Even a glance at him would cause the killing intent to intrude one's mind, stripping one of one's fighting prowess. An otherworldly demon emperor. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes. Just the sheer intensity of the killing intent emanated by the huge otherworldly demon had already surpassed that of the Qingtian emperor. He had only felt something similar to this from Vicious and the otherworldly demon ancient sage he had killed. Of course, the presence of the otherworldly demon before him was far weaker as compared to those two, but it was still plenty formidable. Even if he wasn't an otherworldly demon emperor, he was likely to be very close to becoming one. Paying respects to the commander, General Hour hurriedly clasped his fist and greeted the tall otherworldly demon. The commander nodded. You may take your leave now. I don't want anyone interrupting me. Yes, Commander. General Hour nodded before swiftly leaving the area. After ensuring that there was no one around, the commander took a step toward the boxes. With a majestic wave of his hands, all of the boxes around him burst open, revealing the secrets hidden beneath them. Within each of those boxes were stone platforms of equivalent height. A mirror was placed on top of each of these stone platforms. These mirrors were veered at different angles. As light swiftly reflected off them, they swiftly formed a tortoiseshell-like hologram in the air. The appearance of the hologram deepened the sensation Zhang Xian felt. This was a sign that the concealment barrier against the heavens had grown even stronger. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have never guessed that there were such artifacts hidden in the boxes. There's still another box there. At this point, Zhang Xian couldn't help but notice that there was another box in the middle that remained unopened. The commander closed his eyes and felt the aura around him before walking up to the box in the middle. He gently placed his hand upon the box. Kacha! The box burst open as well, revealing a blood-crimson saber floating quietly in the air. The handle of the saber was an elongated skull with a vicious face, and the entire weapon seemed to command a sinister presence. What a formidable saber! It isn't on par with the Dragonbone Divine Spear, but it's indubitably an extraordinary artifact. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes. The malevolent aura emanating from the saber was far stronger than the sword from ancient sage Zirong, which Nangong Yuanfeng had given the Luo clan. That is a half-ancient sage artifact. The voice of the Dragonbone Divine Spear sounded in Zhang Xian's mind. A half-ancient sage artifact? Indeed, between Great Sage and Ancient Sage, there's still a half-ancient sage tier. Cultivators wielding artifacts of such a tier would be able to slay even sempiternal realm cultivators with ease. It's still nowhere close to competing with a true Ancient Sage artifact like me though. As long as Master reaches Ancient Sage, my seal will be released, and I'll gain fighting prowess on par with Ancient Sage cultivators. The Dragonbone Divine Spear explained. Hearing those words, Zhang Xian's face turned grim. If the otherworldly demon were to really use a weapon of such prowess to assault the Xingming Sword Saints, they might very well fall victim to it. Damn these scoundrels! Zhang Xian cursed beneath his breath. He thought that the otherworldly demons were afraid to make a move, but who could have thought that they were actually preparing their trump card? I can't let them succeed. Having lived as an orphan in his previous life, while he found it difficult to express his feelings, he did treasure the familial ties he had with the Xingming Sword Saints. Yet, the otherworldly demons actually wanted to assassinate them. Unforgivable. There was no way he could allow them to succeed. However, with his current strength, unless he were to use the Ancient Sage corpse, it would be impossible for him to defeat the commander standing before him. But if he were to use the Ancient Sage corpse right now, he would deplete his soul energy swiftly. Given that he was currently in the midst of the enemy's encampment, that was an extremely risky move to do. Just as Zhang Xian was still pondering over how he should deal with the commander, he saw the latter abruptly taking a breath. A burst of power flurried from the commander. Gritting his teeth, the commander stepped forward and grabbed the demonic saber. Tzz. A crimson glow flickered from the skeletal handle of the demonic saber. With an abrupt jolt, the demonic saber knocked the commander away and assaulted him with a gush of malevolent aura. The commander's face darkened upon seeing this sight, and he hurriedly retreated 2 steps. It took a while before he managed to suppress the raging energies in his body. He paused for a moment before speaking slowly. I don't intend to tame you. I just need you to help me to slay 2 people. It went without saying that the half-ancient sage artifact had a weapon spirit, so it was possible to negotiate with it. Wung. However, it didn't seem like the skull on the demonic saber was willing to listen to his words at all. It fell silent after jolting the commander away, completely disregarding his words. It was as if it was telling the commander that he would have to show ample strength to prove himself worthy of speaking to it first. Since you aren't willing to cooperate, don't blame me for taking extreme measures then. Seeing how arrogant the demonic saber was, the commander's complexion didn't look too good either. Narrowing his eyes, light began gathering on the surface of his palm, before eventually forming a transparent, thin film. Following which, he stepped forward and grabbed the demonic saber once more. Tzz. The demonic saber had no intentions to give in either. The 2 formidable forces collided with one another, causing dimension rifts to surface in the surroundings. Due to the seer artifacts and the formation cast over the area, despite the powerful shockwaves diffusing into the surroundings as a result of their clashes, not the slightest hint of energy leaked out of the area. That so-called commander fellow hasn't tamed the demonic saber yet. Zhang Xian widened his eyes in realization. It seemed like the mirrors served 2 purposes. Firstly, it was to dull the Xingming Sword Saint's instincts, so as to enhance the chances of conducting a successful assassination. Secondly, it was to conceal the existence of this half-ancient sage saber. That would also explain why they had to move the boxes manually. If the saber had already been tamed, they might have been able to keep it into a storage ring. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, so they had no choice but to go through the additional trouble. Considering how powerful the commander already was, if he were to successfully tame the demonic saber, even if his assassination were to fail in the end, his prowess was still beyond what the Xingming Sword Saints could deal with. This is perfect. I'll just have to stop him from taming the demonic saber. Zhang Xian was still wondering how he should stop the commander, but since the latter hadn't tamed the demonic saber yet, this matter would be much easier to resolve. While the commander was devoting all of his strength into dealing with the saber, Zhang Xian began to move his muscles and bones once more. Jai. In the blink of an eye, he had already assumed another identity. In the midst of the formation of mirrors, the commander eyed the demonic saber before him warily. He knew how powerful the demonic saber was, so he didn't dare to hold back at all. He drove his Jinshi to the limits and sent a concentrated barrage of powerful attacks one after another against the demonic saber. He could feel the winds of the battle gradually turning in his favor. This was the decisive moment. He couldn't allow his attention to wander at all. If he were to push his way through, he was confident he would be able to win the acknowledgement of the demonic saber. But at this crucial moment, he heard flurried footsteps outside, following which, a figure came into sight. He was the person whom he had just dismissed a moment ago, General Auer. The latter walked right up to him, clasped his fist and bowed. "Commander, I have already relayed your orders to the men. No one will interrupt you anymore. You can cultivate with a peace of mind." The commander's body twitched upon hearing those words. Most great sage cultivators were strong enough to multitask, but dealing with the demonic saber left no room for his concentration to wander. Not only did he have to fend off its furious assault, more importantly, he had to keep the demonic saber's malevolent aura from corroding his mind too. At a time like this, silence was of utmost importance. This was also the reason why the commander had ordered General Auer to keep anyone from interrupting him. Yet, this fool actually barged in just to report to him that he had fulfilled the order. Do you have any common sense? Isn't it obvious that my order includes you as well? How am I supposed to cultivate with a peace of mind with you around? You're dismissed. Suppressing the urge to give General Auer a tight slap, the commander bellowed with a wintry voice. Hoo-hoo! The sudden fluctuation in his emotions opened a gap for the malevolent aura of the demonic saber to seep into his mind, causing his consciousness to blur a little. As a result of that, his movements grew a little sluggish. Yes, Commander, General Auer replied resoundingly before taking a step back, seemingly about to leave the room. However, just as he was about to step out of the door, he abruptly halted his footsteps, as if having recalled something. He turned around and asked, "Commander, it's going to be lunchtime very soon. Do you want to have beef brisket noodles or omelette du fromage? I'll get the kitchen to prepare one portion specially for you." Beef brisket noodles? Omelette du fromage? The commander was startled by those words. Do we have such food over here? As long as there was ample spiritual energy, cultivators at their level could easily fast for over 10 years. Given that they were in the midst of the war, who would be in a mood to eat beef brisket noodles or omelette du fromage? Whatever that was. Scram. He was in a crucial period of the taming process, and he needed absolute silence at this moment. Yet that fellow just had to prattle on and on by the side. If the commander had hypertension, his veins would have already popped from sheer anger. That momentary distraction from General Auer allowed the demonic saber, which had just been forced into a disadvantageous position, to make a comeback. It sent a gush of malevolent aura toward the commander, further blurring his consciousness. The splitting headache caused by the malevolent aura caused cold sweat to trickle down the commander's head. "Ah, you don't seem to be in too good of a mood. Do you want some iced water to cool yourself down?" General Auer asked with a concerned tone. "Look how much you are sweating. Are you feeling unwell?" The commander. Screw you. Why have I never noticed that this idiot has such an irritating mouth before? You are a general, not a chef or an attendant. Furthermore, isn't it plain to see that I'm busy at the moment? Just why are you so determined to trouble me at this moment? I told you to scram. Scram. Unable to take it any longer, the commander howled with a mixture of fury and desperation in his voice. However, it didn't seem like his intimidation was working very well, as the other party's voice soon sounded once more. "Wow, there's no need to get so touchy. You could have told me that you weren't thirsty. What about soup then? I heard that the kitchen has just boiled an amazing pork bone soup. Shall I serve a bowl to you too?" Puh! Something within the commander snapped at the moment. In the next, however, The malevolent aura successfully breached the mental defenses of the commander, causing his face to pale and fresh blood to spew from his mouth. Freak you! Are you done or not? Are you really blind? Can't you see that I'm in the midst of taming the demonic saber? Get some common sense, you jackass. Suppressing the boiling rage within him, the commander took deep breaths, and with forced composure he spat through gritted teeth. I don't want food, I don't want water, and I don't want soup too. Now, get out of this room and stop bothering me. Commander, you don't have to worry. I have relayed strict orders to the men, so you can be certain that no one would dare to bother you. Only fools seeking death would dare to oppose your orders. Even if you don't say a word, I would slay that dimwit with my own hands. General Auer waved his hand grandly and spoke with an imposing demeanor. The commander felt a stabbing pain in his chest. Is there a screw loose in your mind? What makes you think that I am referring to others? The one who is bothering me is you. Just as the commander was about to hurl expletives at that dense subordinate of his, General Auer turned his earnest gaze to him once more and asked, Commander, isn't it a little too boring to be idling around here without doing anything? Shall we sing together? If you are too shy, I don't mind singing for you either. Pooh! The commander spurted another mouthful of blood. This was the first time the commander came to know what being on the verge of insanity felt like. He felt like he could suffer a mental breakdown there and then. Sing, 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 sing your head. I am a member of otherworldly demon royalty, a sempiternal realm expert. Yet you want me to sing with you? Did your head get crushed under a boulder? A highly capable and tactful subordinate General Auer was. The commander had always regarded him highly and treated him as his confidant. The latter was extremely good at reading the atmosphere and would never do anything that overstepped his boundary. Why would he suddenly become such a pain in the ass to deal with today? I told you clearly not to disturb me, but you seem to be finding all sorts of nonsense to bug me. Are you doing this purposely? A thought suddenly came to the commander's mind, and he hurriedly took a closer look at General Auer. However, the appearance, the soul aura, the killing intent, and the intonation when he spoke, they were all identical to the General Auer he knew. If he really had to point out a difference, it would be the helmet. Wait, the helmet was different. Could it be that this fellow wasn't General Auer, but another person in disguise? But he had never heard of anyone in the world who was able to put up such a convincing disguise, which even he was unable to see through. While he was still deep in thought, General Auer took in a deep breath and said, Very well, I'll go first then. Kong sure had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Pooh! The commander spurted yet another mouthful of blood. With his eyes reddened with rage, he hollered, I'll kill you first. Unable to stand this nonsense any longer, he decisively retracted his palm from the demonic saber and thrust it toward General Auer instead. General Auer's constant harassment had already placed him in a bad position against the demonic saber, and abruptly releasing his grasp from it only served to worsen his situation. A surge of malevolent aura overran his body, leaving him lightheaded. This single move had already inflicted severe damage to his primordial spirit. He knew that it would take him at least half a year to make a full recovery. However, he couldn't take it anymore. Not even his mother was as naggy as this. If he didn't kill this bastard right now, his heart might just explode from all the rage he had accumulated within. Boom! The might of his palm poured forth like a ferocious dragon, surging forward with unstoppable momentum. In an instant, it had already arrived right before General Auer. Horrified, General Auer hurriedly hid behind one of the stone platforms as he cried out indignantly, Commander, I am your beloved Auer. An anti-divination mirror was placed on top of the stone platform. In the face of such a powerful attack, the fellow before him fled frantically behind another one of the stone platforms. You bastard! With another mirror standing in the way of his attack, the commander had no choice but to forcefully retract his palm strike once more. Why don't you stop being a coward and face me like a man? The very fact that the other party was able to injure him meant that the other party wielded strength close to a sempiternal realm cultivator, if not equal. Those who had reached such a height would value their dignity and reputation a lot, sometimes even going to great lengths to protect them. But the fellow before him simply kept hiding behind the mirrors, not daring to face his attacks directly at all. Was this the kind of etiquette an expert should have? Shameless? Cowardly? Don't you think it's unseemly for someone as powerful as you to be resorting to such despicable tactics? He had also clashed with master teachers before. They were dignified and righteous individuals who would rather lose their lives than to have their dignity sullied. As if it wasn't enough for the other party to disguise himself as Our and intentionally disturb him in the midst of his cultivation. The other party was even spouting lies as if they didn't cost anything and kept darting behind the mirrors around. Stop being a shameless bastard and face me head on. If you have the guts to do what you did, surely you should have the guts to face my wrath too. With an enraged roar, the commander charged forward to tear the other party apart when the other party abruptly pointed to the sky once more and exclaimed, "Watch out! Danger! Danger your head!" Knowing that it was just another distraction tactic by the other party, the commander chose to pay no heed to those words and continued with his charge. But before his palm could land on his target, goosebumps suddenly rose up all over his body. He could sense a hulking force was falling toward him from the sky. It was beyond the range of his spiritual perception to perceive exactly what it was, but with the speed it was traveling at, there was no way he would be able to dodge it in the midst of his charge. Pada! The commander was smashed into the ground in a shape. In an instant, he had sustained innumerable fractures all over his body, and crimson blood spouted from his mouth, as if a fountain. Ha ha ha! I ding ding, have finally made a comeback. The world shall shudder beneath my bottom. An excited voice sounded right above the commander. A massive brick-like bottom twisted around on top of the commander, producing crisp sounds reminiscent of snapped twigs. With each twist, another mouthful of blood would be ejected from the commander's body. The commander really wanted to bawl at this very moment. It was no easy feat to acquire a great sage artifact. They were extremely difficult to create, which made them rare and invaluable entities. Even a great sage cultivator would be the envy of his peers if he were to have a great sage artifact in his possession. Yet the spear and the brick that fellow had in his possession were actually both great sage artifacts. Where the flying cow did this monster come from? I warned you. I told you to watch out, but you simply wouldn't heed my warnings. Zhang Xian shook his head in disappointment, as if admonishing an obstinate child who simply wouldn't listen to the advice of his elders. With a sigh of lamentation, he walked up to the commander and took the storage ring right off his finger. The commander, I am not dead yet. I'll leave this fellow to you. After taking away the storage ring, Zhang Xian waved his hand casually before turning his attention away from the commander. The Dragonbone Divine Spear and the Golden Origin Cauldron were delighted to receive such an order. It had been long since they had any showtime. Thus, one did its best to twist and turn its bottom, to squeeze the last bit of juice from the poor man below it while the other pierced him relentlessly with its tip. Entrusting the commander to his two artifacts, Zhang Xian turned his attention to the demonic saber. This demonic saber was even stronger than the Golden Origin Cauldron. The malevolent aura that it emanated was an extremely powerful soul offense, which could phase even otherworldly demons. If he had such a weapon in his grasp, he would surely have been able to defeat the commander much more easily. All he would have to do was to toss it out along with the Dragonbone Divine Spear and the Golden Origin Cauldron, and the three of them would be able to put an end to the commander by themselves without him lifting a finger. Let me give it a try. Emulating what the commander did earlier, he reached out and grasped the handle of the demonic saber. Boom! A burst of killing intent surged right into his body, piercing right for his primordial spirit. Wung! His primordial spirit emanated a golden glow and warded off the killing intent. What a formidable attack! Despite having successfully withstood the attack, Zhang Xian was still forced to retreat a step under the powerful burst of killing intent. Had he not tempered his primordial spirit with the Empyrean heavenly flame previously, that attack would have inflicted severe damage on him in an instant. Let's see if your killing intent is more formidable than mine. Since you wish to put your killing intent against me, I shan't stand on ceremony either then. Zhang Xian drove his heaven's pathshanxi, and in the next moment, a torrent of killing intent came crashing down on the demonic saber. This killing intent was raw and unrefined, but its sheer purity would cause even one's blood to freeze over. Unexpectedly, before the killing intent could even reach the arrogant demonic saber, Pudong! The demonic saber fell to the ground and lowered itself subserviently, as if paying respects to its new master. Its body trembled uncontrollably, hinting at the deep fear it carried for the person standing before it. Seeing such a sight through his swollen eyes, tears streamed freely down the commander's face. Aren't you supposed to be a proud and lofty weapon? Why are you submitting to him so quickly? Where did all your pride and dignity go to? The commander was so traumatized that he looked as if he had lost his soul. It was with high expectations that he led his army into the subterranean gallery, intending to push his forces into the master-teacher continent. If he succeeded, his name would ripple throughout the otherworldly demonic tribe, and his standing would swiftly rise through the ranks. But before he could even launch a proper invasion, he was already violated by a brick and a spear. Moreover, the demonic saber which he had specially brought out of his clan for this special occasion actually submitted to the other party. Where in the world did the prideful attitude you have shown me earlier go to? Why in the name of the heavens are you groveling on the ground right now? I see. This fellow submits to those who possess purer killing intent than it does. The killing intent I am able to emanate through my heaven's pathshanxi is at least comparable to vicious, so it's no wonder why it submitted to me so quickly. Zhang Xian nodded in realization. While the commander was likely to be an otherworldly demon emperor as well, judging from the Qingtian emperor's standards, his killing intent still came nowhere on par with his heaven's pathshanxi. With a light tap of his finger, he flicked a droplet of blood over to fuse with the demonic saber. Soon after, he felt a will surging into his mind. Infernal Black Saber. That was the name of the demonic saber lying before him. Just like what the Dragonbone Divine Spear had said, the Infernal Black Saber was indeed a half-ancient sage artifact. However, that was not all that was to it. It was actually an upgradable artifact. The upgradable artifacts of the otherworldly demonic tribe were fundamentally different from that of mankind. The Golden Origin Cauldron was one of the rare upgradable artifacts in the world, but in order to raise its tier, it had to be reforged with other precious ores. On the other hand, the upgradable artifacts of the otherworldly demonic tribe only demanded sufficient fresh blood or souls for their tier to be raised. In other words, he didn't have to reforge the Inferno Black Saber and risk messing it up. All he had to do was to slay more experts in order for it to grow stronger. It was precisely due to this nature of it that the demonic saber emanated such an intense malevolent aura. In other words, this means that you can be upgraded into an ancient sage artifact. Upon learning of this matter, Zhang Xian asked the Infernal Black Saber with excitement gleaming in his eyes. One must know that ancient sage artifacts wielded the prowess to slay ancient sages. If the Infernal Black Saber could be upgraded, he would really have no fear for cultivators beneath ancient sage. I can be upgraded, but I'll need to devour the fresh blood of an ancient sage for it. The Infernal Black Saber replied courteously. You'll require the fresh blood of an ancient sage in order to be upgraded? Forget it. Zhang Xian's lips twitched upon hearing those words. This was ridiculous. If he was strong enough to hunt down an ancient sage and feed the Infernal Black Saber the latter's blood, what need would he have for it? If you really aren't able to find any ancient sages, I can also be upgraded through devouring the blood and souls of sempiternal realm or half-ancient sage cultivators. However, the process would be much slower. As if seeing through the thoughts of its master, the Infernal Black Saber quickly added, "The blood of sempiternal realm cultivators works for you too? What about that fellow over there?" Zhang Xian asked as he pointed a finger at the commander. Even though his fighting prowess is subpar, he's still a core member of the otherworldly demon royalty. If I could consume him, I should be able to advance my cultivation to the forefront of half-ancient sage artifacts. The infernal black saber replied with a nod. Good, I'll leave him to you then. Zhang Xian replied in the first place. He didn't harbor the slightest sliver of goodwill for the otherworldly demonic tribe. Furthermore, the other party was even planning on assassinating his parents. And that was something he couldn't accept. Thank you, master. Hearing those words, the infernal black saber rushed over delightfully and sunk its blade into the commander's flesh. It didn't take long for the commander to be reduced to a withered corpse, his soul and blood sapped dry. After being nourished with the commander's blood and soul, the infernal black saber looked even more demonic than before. Its strength had advanced considerably, to the level where even the golden origin cauldron would take a detour just to avoid it. Not bad. Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. At this rate, it shouldn't be long before he successfully upgraded the infernal black saber into an ancient sage artifact. That would truly be a huge boost to his fighting prowess. Alright, you should return to my storage ring for the time being. Having settled the matter here, Zhang Xian kept the 3 artifacts back into his storage ring, before heaving a sigh of relief. Having dealt with the infernal black saber and the commander, it was unlikely that the remaining otherworldly demons would pose much of a threat to him anymore. Nevertheless, the power of the mass shouldn't be underestimated. To be safe, he should still tread carefully. If he could find a way to massacre all of the otherworldly demons at once, that would be for the best. Otherwise, even if their commander had been killed, it was only a matter of time before a new commander took over and dispatched these otherworldly demons against them. If a battle were to break out, who knew how many offspring of the Zhang clan would lose their lives? Zhang Xian stroked his lower jaw contemplatively. Considering how there was a sempiternal realm commander in this otherworldly demon encampment, it was likely that there would be other great sage military officers as well too. It would be too naive to think that the otherworldly demon army would collapse by itself just because it had lost its commander. It was unlikely that he would face an opponent as powerful as the commander within the encampment anymore. But he didn't have the strength to eradicate a well-trained army on his own either, even with the assistance of his 3 artifacts. He had to think things through and formulate a feasible plan before making his move. The earlier battle with the commander has caused quite a huge commotion, but fortunately, due to the mirrors and formations cast around the area, no one has realized the happenings over here yet. In other words, the soldiers are still oblivious of the demise of their commander. I might be able to pull something off if I could successfully impersonate him, Zhang Xian thought. In order to hide the existence of the infernal black saber, the commander had gone to great lengths to isolate this room, such that not even the slightest aura of shockwave would be able to escape from this room. It was ironic, but it was precisely due to the arrangements made by the commander that no one realized that he had already been killed. Since Zhang Xian was able to disguise himself impeccably as General Hour, there was no reason why he couldn't pass himself off as the commander too. He took off the helmet from the corpse and quickly wore it. At the same time, he began to shift his muscles and bones, slowly morphing into the appearance of the commander. Let me check how many great sage cultivators are there in this encampment. Leaving the stone platforms and mirrors behind, Zhang Xian departed from the area and headed straight for the main tent located at the center of the base. Since the commander was at Sempiternal Realm, it was unlikely that his vice-commanders would be too weak. First and foremost, he would have to check how many great sage cultivators there were in this camp, and deal with them promptly. Once all of the great sage cultivators were gone, the remaining soldiers wouldn't be able to pose much of a threat to him anymore. Having assumed the appearance of the commander, there was no guard or soldier who dared to halt Zhang Xian's footsteps as he strutted through the camp with widened strides. Soon enough, he arrived at the main tent. "Commander!" The otherworldly demon soldiers guarding the main tent quickly clasped their fist and greeted him. "Zhang Xian nodded casually as he walked into the tent. Within the tent, he saw 7 figures seated all around with grim looks on their faces. "Commander, you have succeeded?" Upon seeing the return of the commander, fervent joy spread across their faces. It seemed like these figures were also aware that the commander was planning to assassinate the Xingming Sword Saints, and they were waiting for the results here. I haven't done it yet. There's an urgent matter that we need to discuss, and I need you all to offer some constructive advice. Zhang Xian said authoritatively. Due to the presence of seer artifacts, he dared not to use the Library of Heaven's path lightly. Otherwise, he could risk bringing the lightning tribulation upon the base before resolving the major threats. He wasn't too sure what was the situation concerning the commander, but through his rich experience of disguising himself, as well as the prowess of Luo Ruoxin's disguise amulet, the 7 people in the room didn't notice any anomaly. Commander, feel free to order us as you deem fit. The crowd quickly clasped their fists and replied. Zhang Xian said as he nodded contemplatively. In truth, he had discreetly activated his eye of insight and was examining the crowd before him. Just like what he had guessed, these 7 fellows were all great sages. 2 of them were at Intuitive Impulse Realm, 3 were at Aureate Body Realm, and the last 2 were at Introspective Convalescence Realm. It was fortunate he didn't rush into making a move earlier, or else if these 7 people were to collaborate against him, it would have truly been a tough battle. Not to mention, with the sheer number of soldiers they had, if the otherworldly demon army were to form a collaborative formation, even sempiternal realm cultivators would have trouble escaping. Zhang Xian pondered deeply for a moment before beckoning one of the Intuitive Impulse Realm otherworldly demon out and said, You, follow me for a moment. I need to delegate some tasks to you privately. Yes, Commander. Without the slightest hint of doubt, the otherworldly demon pointed out followed him out of the main tent. After leaving the barracks, Zhang Xian swiftly led the otherworldly demon toward the room with the mirrors. Commander, what's wrong? Seeing how careful the commander was being, sealing the entire area completely such that not even the slightest aura could leak out, a serious look appeared on the face of the otherworldly demon. It's like this. Stroking his lower jaw, Zhang Xian casually walked up to the otherworldly demon when all of a sudden, a demonic blade materialized in his hand and sliced right for the otherworldly demon's neck. Not expecting the commander to make a move on him suddenly, the otherworldly demon swiftly backed away. No matter what, he was still a great 3-Dan intuitive impulse cultivator, and had been through many battles. Despite being caught off guard, he did not become flustered. Pada. However, barely after taking 2 steps back, a massive brick crashed down on his head and reduced him to a flat pancake. Given how even the sempiternal realm commander had been rendered completely helpless under the crushing might of the Golden Origin Cauldron, how could this intuitive impulse realm otherworldly demon stand a chance? It was a one-hit KO. Puha! The infernal black saber swiftly flew forth and devoured the otherworldly demon's blood and soul. Without much hesitation, Zhang Xian returned to the main tent and beckoned the other intuitive impulse realm otherworldly demon out. You come out for a moment. 5 minutes later, he stepped into the main tent once more and said, The 3 of you follow me. The 3 Aureate Body Realm otherworldly demons followed the commander out, leaving the 2 introspective convalescence realm fellows staring at one another blankly. Aren't we supposed to be discussing a matter of some sort? Why are we being called out one after another? Their doubt did not last too long. The commander walked back into the main tent with a satisfied look on his face. As soon as he entered, he set up an isolation barrier around the tent and said, I had some missions to delegate to them, so I had to meet them privately. It's finally your turn. The 2 introspective convalescence fellows immediately got to their feet, fearing that they would miss a single word about this highly secretive mission. Before they could react, a cold glint sliced through the air, and 2 heads fell to the ground. Till their final breaths, they could not understand why the commander would make a move on them. Zhang Xian might still have some problems trying to deal with sempiternal realm cultivators, but introspective convalescence realm cultivators were already a one-shot, one-kill to him. After dealing with the 7 of them and disposing of their corpses, Zhang Xian beckoned a guard stationed outside to come in. Gather all of the great sage experts in our camp for a meeting, Zhang Xian ordered. Commander, there are only 7 great sage vice commanders in our camp. You called out 5 of them earlier, and the remaining 2 were in this tent. The guard replied with a doubtful frown. Earlier, he had seen the commander calling out 5 of the vice commanders one after another, so there should still have been 2 more vice commanders in the main tent. Why would they suddenly disappear without a trace? The guard was only at Saint 7 Dan. Considering how even the great sage 3 Dan intuitive impulse realm vice commanders were unable to see through his disguise, there was no way that the guard could have done so. It was unthinkable to him that their commander would have already been killed. Good. Zhang Xian had just been verifying the matter to be safe. Since it was confirmed that there were only 7 great sages in the camp, he was saved a great ton of trouble. He stood up and instructed, "Inform all of the soldiers to gather before the main tent." All of the soldiers? That's right, everyone. This includes those who are resting, patrolling, and on sentry. Get all of them here. Zhang Xian waved his hand grandly. Yes, Commander. The guard quickly left the area and sounded the assembly horn. 10 minutes later, when Zhang Xian walked out of the main tent, he saw countless otherworldly demons standing neatly in a formation. With just one glance, Zhang Xian's eyebrows had already shot up in astonishment. There had to be over 10,000 otherworldly demons before him. It was fortunate that he had not made a move recklessly earlier. Otherwise, a collaborative formation consisting of over 10,000 Saint 3 Dan otherworldly demons would have been more than enough to render a half-ancient sage powerless. It was truly a wise decision from Sword Saint Xing to retreat. The Zhang clan was not weak, but against such a huge army, they would still lose at least half of their entire force, even if Lady Luck was shining on them. Suppressing his shock, Zhang Xian bellowed, "General Hour." "Yes, Commander." General Hour stepped out of the formation and clasped his fist. "Get your men to bring the item that I just set up over here." Zhang Xian waved his hand. "Yes, Commander." General Hour had no idea why the commander had issued such a command, but it would be insubordination to oppose an order from a person of a higher rank. Thus, he quickly led a group of people and left the area. Several minutes later, the stone platforms and mirrors were moved over. Divide yourself into groups of 1,000, and each group will take one of these artifacts. I want the members of each group to get into a line and hold hands with one another. The person at the front is to place their hand on the mirror. Zhang Xian commanded, "Groups of 1,000? Get into a line and hold hands with one another?" All of the soldiers were confused. Were they going to practice some kind of new formation or something? But why did it sound so shady? They had never heard of any formations that required cultivators to hold hands with one another. Unable to take it any longer, another otherworldly demon wearing a black helmet similar to that of General Hour stepped forward and said, "Commander, the Zhang clan has been eyeing us warily all this time. If they launch an attack while everyone is here holding hands with one another, it could end in a catastrophe." The other soldiers also turned intrigued gazes over. "You fool!" Zhang Xian's face darkened as he roared in fury. "This is the battle plan that I have just designed with the other vice commanders. Do you all know what these mirrors are?" "No, Commander. These mirrors do look a little extraordinary, but I can't figure out what they are used for." The crowd shook their heads in response. If not for the fact that Zhang Xian had come into close contact with seers in the past, he would not have been able to deduce the purpose of these mirrors. Considering that these soldiers and officers were unlikely to have ever met human seers before, there was no way that they would be able to recognize these mirrors. These mirrors are the treasures of the Human Seer Guild. They are able to provide concealment from the heavens, hindering even intuitive impulse cultivators from discerning your presence. The reason I want you to stand in a file and hold hands with one another is to conceal your killing intent and auras, so that we can sneak into the fortress of those pesky humans and catch them off guard. Does everything make sense to you now? Zhang Xian said with an authoritative wave of his hand. Sneak into the fortress of those pesky humans? Does our commander intend to launch a surprise assault? It's able to conceal our killing intent and auras? That's incredible. If we could successfully pull off this surprise assault, we will become celebrated heroes of the otherworldly demonic tribe. Hearing the effects of the mirrors, The faces of the otherworldly demons flushed crimson as they trembled in agitation. They also knew that a direct confrontation with the Zhang clan would result in heavy casualties. If they could pull off a surprise assault, their chances of survival would be much higher. Perhaps, they might even accrue significant military contributions as a result of the operation, and be handsomely rewarded for their effort. If you get what I'm saying, hurry up and do it. Ensure that there aren't any artifacts in between that would terminate the connection. If anyone reveals our location to the master teachers, because they aren't holding the hand of the person next to them tightly enough, they'll be the sinner of the otherworldly demonic tribe. That person will be executed on the spot, Zhang Xian commanded authoritatively. We'll be putting everything into this surprise assault. This operation must end in a success. No failure is permitted. Understood? Yes, Commander. The otherworldly demon soldiers nodded with looks of agitation on their faces. Very well. Seeing that his soldiers had received his orders, Zhang Xian waved his hands grandly and said, "Prepare the formation." Walala. The massive army immediately divided themselves into groups of 1,000, and the strongest soldiers of the group stood at the front of each file, placing their hands in direct contact with the mirror. The others held hands with one another with iron-tight grips, and the file extended for several hundred meters. Good. Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. He was just about to give a motivational speech when he suddenly heard a gale sounding above. Raising his head, he saw a figure appearing right before him. Commander Heng Jiang, what are you doing? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.